Success tastes like copper pennies and broken promises. That's what I used to tell myself during those endless nights at the office, grinding away at presentations while my marriage collected dust at home. I should have known better, but ambition has a way of blinding you to the cracks forming right under your feet. I was reviewing quarterly projections when Simon walked into my office, his presence filling the doorway like a storm front. "Athena, got a minute?" The way he said it, casual but charged, made my stomach tighten. I'd worked under Simon long enough to recognize when something big was coming. Of course. I closed my laptop, giving him my full attention. That's what got me here in the first place. Always being ready. Always saying yes. The Carson branch needs new leadership. Their numbers are in the toilet, and the board wants someone who can turn things around. He leaned against my desk, arms crossed. "I recommended you." My heart stuttered. Carson was our problem child, rural, resistant to change, and notorious for eating through section chiefs like candy. It was also 3 hours away from home. "It's a 6-month assignment," Simon continued. "Success there means executive track. First female exec at Quantum. That's got your name written all over it." The words hit me like a shot of adrenaline. I'd been chasing that ceiling for years, watching less qualified men climb past me. Now here it was, my chance to shatter it. "Ryan," I started, then stopped myself. My husband's face flashed in my mind, supportive smile, worried eyes. "Take the weekend. Think it over." Simon pushed off my desk. "But Athena, don't let anyone else's limitations become yours." That night, I drove home with my mind racing and my hands tight on the steering wheel. Ryan was in the kitchen when I walked in, chopping vegetables with the precise, measured movements he brought to everything. "You're home early," he said, not looking up. "Simon offered me the Carson branch." The words tumbled out before I could cushion them. The knife stopped mid-chop. "Carson? That's..." He set the knife down carefully. "That's not exactly commuting distance." 6 months. Executive track afterward." I moved closer, studying his profile. "It's what I've been working toward." "Right?" He resumed chopping, harder now. "Of course it is." "Ryan." "No, I get it. This is your shot." He scraped the vegetables into a bowl, still not meeting my eyes. "We'll figure it out. We always do." But his voice had that hollow quality I'd started hearing more often lately, like he was reading from a script he didn't believe in anymore. "I haven't said yes yet," I offered, even though we both knew I would. He finally looked at me then, and something in his expression made my chest ache. "Yes, you have. You said yes the moment Simon walked into your office." Later that night, I lay awake listening to Ryan's measured breathing beside me. He was right. I had already decided. The question wasn't whether I would take the position, but what it would cost us. My phone buzzed with a text from Simon. "Board meeting Monday. Need your answer by then." I typed back one word. "Yes." In the dark, Ryan shifted slightly, and I wondered if he was really asleep, if he could feel the decision I'd just made vibrating through the mattress like an earthquake's first tremor. I didn't know then that I was setting in motion events that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my marriage, about Ryan, about myself. I didn't know that sometimes the path to revenge starts with a single word, typed in the dark while your husband pretends to sleep beside you. I just knew that come Monday, everything would change. And part of me was already wondering if I was ready for what that really meant. The cardboard boxes mock me from their neat stack in the corner of our bedroom. Each one represents another piece of my life I'll need to compartmentalize, label, and transport to Carson. Ryan hasn't helped pack a single one. "You're really doing this." His voice startles me as I fold another sweater. He's leaning against the door frame, arms crossed, watching me with that new distance in his eyes. "We talked about this." I keep folding, trying to ignore how my hands shake slightly. "The movers come Thursday." "Right, Thursday." He pushes off the doorframe, walks to the window. Claire invited us for dinner tonight. Sort of a going away thing. The pause before going away carries weight I'm not ready to examine. That's nice of her. Unless you're too busy packing. There it is. That edge in his voice that's become sharper lately. I set down the sweater. No, dinner would be good. We should go. Claire's house smells like rosemary and unspoken words when we arrive. She hugs me tight, too tight, and whispers, "I made your favorite." But her smile doesn't reach her eyes. Ryan gravitates to the kitchen, where he and Claire fall into their familiar rhythm of cooking together. I watch from the doorway as they move around each other with the easy grace of siblings who grew up sharing spaces. They don't need words to communicate, a trait that used to charm me but now feels excluding. "He'll be fine, you know," Claire says later when Ryan stepped out to take a work call. "I'll keep an eye on him. I'm not abandoning him." The words come out sharper than intended. "It's 6 months." Claire takes a slow sip of wine. 6 months is a long time to be alone. He's not alone. He has you, his friends, his work. That's not what I meant. She sets down her glass with deliberate care. Marriage isn't just about existing in the same space. It's about choosing each other, every day. "I am choosing him," I snap. "I'm choosing our future." "Are you?" Her voice is gentle, which somehow makes it worse. Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're choosing yourself. Ryan returns before I can respond, but Claire's words burrow under my skin like splinters. Through dinner, I watch him laugh at his sister's jokes, animated in a way he hasn't been with me in weeks. When did we start speaking different languages? Later that night, lying in bed, Ryan rolls toward me. "I've been thinking," he says to the darkness. "Maybe I could look for work in Carson. Not right away, but eventually." My heart clenches. It's the first time he's suggested following me, but something in his tone sounds more like surrender than support. "Your whole client base is here," I remind him. "Your sister, your friends." "Yeah." He rolls away again. "Just a thought." The silence stretches between us like a chasm. I want to reach across it, but I'm afraid of what I might find. Or worse, what I might not find. My phone buzzes. It's Simon. "Board approved the transfer package. You're all set for Monday." I stare at the message until the screen dims, then goes dark. In the reflection, I catch a glimpse of Ryan's back, rigid with consciousness. He's not sleeping either. "Ryan?" I whisper. Are we okay?" The pause before his answer feels endless. "Of course we are." But his voice has that same hollow quality from before, like he's reading from a script he doesn't believe in anymore. I lie there, listening to him pretend to sleep, and wonder if this is how cracks start, not with dramatic breaks, but with small silences that grow deeper day by day. Claire's words echo in my head. 6 months is a long time to be alone. But I'm starting to think maybe we're already alone, lying here together in the dark, each of us guarding secrets we're not ready to share. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice whispers that maybe this distance isn't just about Carson anymore. Maybe it never was. Carson feels like exile. The office is a converted warehouse with flickering fluorescent lights and the constant hum of ancient heating ducts. My team, if you can call them that, greet my morning presentations with crossed arms and barely concealed eye rolls. These implementation timelines are unrealistic, Dave, my senior developer, announces during our third meeting. Maybe things worked differently back at headquarters, but here in the real world is exactly where we're losing market share, I cut in, my voice sharp enough to slice through his condescension. "Unless you'd prefer to explain our numbers to corporate?" The silence that follows tastes like victory, but it's hollow. Later, I catch snippets of conversation in the break room. Corporate princess and temporary assignment spoken like curses. My phone buzzes. Ryan's weekly check-in call. I've started dreading these conversations, each one feeling more like a performance than a connection. Hey. His voice sounds distant, distracted. Bad time? No, just finished a meeting. I close my office door, shutting out the hostile glances. How are you? Good. Busy. Claire's been helping me reorganize the house. Says it's good therapy or something. My stomach tightens. Reorganize? Yeah, making space, moving things around. A pause. It feels different here without all your stuff. The way he says it, casual, almost relieved, makes something crack inside me. Ryan, Sorry, got another call coming in. Client emergency. Talk next week? He hangs up before I can respond. I stare at my phone, wondering when exactly we became strangers who share a last name. That evening, I work late, reviewing project timelines until my eyes burn. My mother's number flashes on my screen. I consider ignoring it, but guilt wins out. Sweetheart, she starts, and I can already hear the judgment creeping in. Claire mentioned she had dinner with Ryan last night. Again. They're siblings, Mom. They're awfully close these days. A wife should be concerned when... A wife should trust her husband. I snap, even as doubt gnaws at my certainty. Trust needs nurturing, Athena. It needs presence. After we hang up, I pull up our home security app, something I've been doing more frequently lately. The living room camera shows Claire and Ryan on the couch, takeout containers spread between them. They're laughing at something I can't hear, and the intimacy of the scene makes my chest ache. My phone pings with an email from Simon. Board meeting tomorrow. Numbers aren't improving fast enough. Need solutions. I close the security app, but not before I see Claire rest her hand on Ryan's arm, her expression full of something that looks too much like pity. The next morning, I arrive early to find my team huddled around Dave's desk, their conversation stopping abruptly when they spot me. On my desk is a printed email, an internal memo I wasn't copied on, discussing contingency plans for leadership transitions at the Carson branch. Looking for something? Dave asks from my doorway, his smile not reaching his eyes. Just admiring your dedication to printing confidential emails, I reply, holding up the paper. Interesting reading material. He shrugs, unrepentant. Thought you should know where things stand, being temporary and all. I stand slowly, squaring my shoulders. Let me be clear, Dave. I didn't come here to make friends or validate your ego. I came here to fix this branch, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. With or without your cooperation. His face darkens, but before he can respond, my phone buzzes. It's a text from Claire. We need to talk about Ryan. My hand tightens on the phone as Dave watches, waiting for me to crack. I delete the message without responding. Meeting in 10 minutes, I tell him, my voice steady despite the chaos churning inside. Bring those realistic timelines you're so fond of discussing. As he leaves, I catch my reflection in the window. Poised, professional, perfect. But underneath, something is shifting, hardening. I'm tired of being the one who bends, who compromises, who pretends not to see the cracks forming in every aspect of my life. Maybe it's time to stop playing nice. Maybe it's time to show them all exactly what this corporate princess can do when pushed too far. I'm reviewing security footage again when I notice it. Ryan started going to the community center 3 times a week, always at the same time, always dressed more carefully than usual. The camera catches him checking his reflection in the hallway mirror before leaving, a gesture so unfamiliar it makes my stomach clench. Claire's message still sits unanswered in my phone. Whatever she needs to tell me about Ryan, I'm not sure I want to hear it. My office phone rings. It's Simon. The board wants an update presentation next week, in person. I'll be there. Make it good, Athena. There's talk about restructuring the Carson branch completely. I hang up and pull up the home security app again, but this time something's different. The cameras are offline. All of them. I call Ryan. It goes to voicemail. I text, "Security system's down. Can you check it?" His response comes hours later. "Sorry, must have unplugged something while cleaning." Cleaning, right. Ryan, who once left dishes in the sink for 3 days, is suddenly Marie Kondo. That night, I drive the 3 hours home without warning him. The house is dark when I arrive, but Ryan's car is in the driveway. I use my key, moving quietly through our home that doesn't quite feel like mine anymore. There's music coming from the basement, our home gym that Ryan rarely used before. I pause at the top of the stairs, hearing laughter. A woman's voice, light and unfamiliar, drifts up. "Your form is perfect," she says. "You're a natural." "I have a good teacher," Ryan responds, his voice warm in a way I haven't heard in months. I should go down. Should confront whatever's happening in my basement. Instead, I retreat silently, drive to a hotel, and spend the night staring at the ceiling, calculating exactly how many lies it takes to destroy a marriage. The next morning, I do what any self-respecting woman would do. I investigate. The community center's website lists their classes. Tuesday and Thursday evenings, mindful movement yoga with Lila Thompson. I scroll through Lila's social media. She's younger than me, with the kind of effortless beauty that makes women like me buy expensive creams and hate ourselves anyway. Her latest post shows her demonstrating a complicated pose, caption reading, "Finding balance in unexpected places." Blessed. The comments section is full of praise, including one from a profile I recognize. Ryan's. "Thanks for showing me the way." My phone buzzes. Claire again. "Please call me. It's important." I block her number. At work, I channel everything into the presentation. Dave watches me with growing unease as I dismantle his excuses, restructure teams, and push through changes with the kind of ruthless efficiency that comes from having nothing left to lose. "You're different lately," he comments after a particularly brutal meeting. Maybe I'm just done pretending. That evening, I call Ryan. He answers on the 4th ring, slightly out of breath. "Hey, everything okay?" "Just checking in. How's the cleaning going?" "Good. Yeah, really good. Actually, I'm kind of in the middle of something. Yoga, maybe?" The silence stretches for 3 heartbeats. "What?" "Nothing. Just noticed you've been spending a lot of time at the community center, finding balance in unexpected places." Athena. "The security cameras are still down, by the way. Funny how that happened right around the time you started getting so flexible. It's not what you think." But his voice has that guilty edge I've learned to recognize. "Isn't it? Tell me, Ryan, does Lila know you're married, or is that something else you're being flexible about?" He starts to respond, but I hang up. My hands are steady as I pull up my email and book a flight home for next week. Then I open my contact list and scroll to Henry Thompson, prominent local businessman, and more importantly, Lila's father. Sometimes revenge doesn't need to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes it just needs to be precise. I send a short email. "Mr. Thompson, I believe we need to discuss a matter concerning your daughter and my husband. Would you be available for coffee next week?" The response comes within minutes. Name the time and place. The cafe where I meet Henry Thompson smells like expensive coffee and old money. He's already seated when I arrive, his tailored suit and carefully neutral expression speaking volumes about power and privilege. "Mrs. Mitchell." He stands, offering his hand. "I must admit, your email intrigued me." "It's still Carter professionally," I correct him, accepting both the handshake and the subtle power play. "I kept my name." "Of course." His smile doesn't reach his eyes. "Though I understand you're rarely home these days to discuss such matters with your husband." The barb lands, but I don't flinch. Instead, I pull out my phone and slide it across the table, Security footage playing silently. Ryan and Lila entering our house. The timestamps tell their own story. Henry's face hardens as he watches. I see. Do you? Because I'm wondering if your daughter sees the whole picture. He sits back, studying me. What exactly are you hoping to achieve here, Mrs. Carter? Clarity. I meet his gaze steadily. Your daughter is involved with a married man, my husband. I thought you should know before it affects both our families' reputations. How considerate. His voice drips sarcasm. And the fact that my company recently signed a major contract with Ryan's firm has nothing to do with your concern? My phone buzzes. Claire again, this time from a different number. I silence it without looking away from Henry. I'm simply providing information. What you do with it is your choice. Later that evening, my mother calls. Claire's been trying to reach you, she says without preamble. She says it's important. I'm sure it is. I'm reviewing the board presentation, making notes with mechanical precision. Did she tell you what Ryan's been up to while I'm away? Athena. Her voice softens with pity. Sometimes when we push people away, don't. The word comes out sharp enough to cut. Don't you dare make this my fault. I'm not, but revenge won't fix what's broken. I laugh, the sound hollow even to my own ears. Who says I want to fix it? After hanging up, I check my email. Henry's already acted. There's a company-wide announcement about a restructuring of vendor relationships. Ryan's firm is notably absent from the new approved list. My phone lights up with Ryan's call. I let it ring. Instead, I pull up the security app again. The cameras are back online. Ryan must think I've forgotten about them. I watch as he paces our living room, phone to his ear. Even without sound, I can read the tension in his movements. Lila appears in frame, reaching for him. He jerks away, gesturing angrily. She covers her face with her hands. They argue silently on my screen, like actors in a play I'm directing from afar. A new email pops up, from Simon. Board presentation moved up. Tomorrow morning. Be ready. I close the security app, but not before I see Claire enter the frame, placing herself between Ryan and Lila. Always the mediator, my sister-in-law. Always trying to fix what's already shattered. My phone buzzes again. A text from an unknown number. You don't understand. It's not what you think. Please let me explain. Leela. I save the number. It might be useful later. The presentation documents blur before my eyes as another text arrives, this time from Claire. You're making a terrible mistake. There's something you need to know about Lila. I block this number too, but her words echo in my head. What don't I understand? What mistake am I making? For a moment, doubt creeps in. Then I remember Ryan's laughter in our basement, Lila's voice floating up the stairs, the casual intimacy of their betrayal. I open my laptop and begin typing an email to Henry, attaching more security footage. Each click of the keyboard feels like another nail in the coffin of my marriage, but I keep typing anyway. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying everything at once. Sometimes it's about watching it all unravel, thread by careful thread, until there's nothing left but the truth. And tomorrow, after the board presentation, I'll finally go home to face that truth in person. The board presentation goes perfectly. Too perfectly. Simon's approving nod, the impressed murmurs from the executives. It all feels hollow, like watching a play where I know the ending but keep pretending anyway. I drive home without calling ahead. The sun is setting when I pull into our driveway, casting long shadows across the familiar landscape of my former life. Ryan's car is there, along with another I don't recognize. Sleek, expensive, clearly new. The front door is unlocked. Music drifts from the kitchen, along with the smell of cooking and the sound of laughter. I move silently through my own house, a ghost in comfortable shoes. They don't notice me at first. Ryan's at the stove, Lila perched on our counter, my counter, wearing one of his old t-shirts. She's showing him something on her phone, both of them smiling at whatever's on the screen. Cozy. My voice cuts through their bubble like a blade. They jump apart. Ryan's face drains of color. Athena? Don't stop on my account. I lean against the doorframe, surprising myself with how steady I feel. You seem right at home. Lila slides off the counter, her eyes wide. I should go. Why? You're already wearing his clothes. Might as well stay for dinner. This isn't... Ryan steps forward, hands raised like he's approaching a wild animal. Let me explain. Explain what? How you've been fucking your yoga instructor in our house? Or how you got Henry Thompson to pull his contracts? Lila's head snaps up. You talked to my father. Someone had to tell him the truth. I smile, all teeth. Since neither of you seemed interested in that particular concept. You don't understand, Lila starts, but Ryan cuts her off. Don't, please. He turns to me, his face a mask of guilt and something else. Relief? I was going to tell you. When? After the divorce, or after you moved her into our bedroom? There was never going to be a divorce. It's Lila who speaks, her voice stronger now. That wasn't the plan. The word plan hits me like a physical blow. I look between them, seeing something I missed before, the way they're standing, not like guilty lovers but like conspirators. What plan? The front door opens. Claire walks in, freezing when she sees us. Oh God! Athena, wait! But I'm already moving, pushing past her to the study. The drawer where we keep our important papers is slightly ajar. I yank it open, rifling through documents until I find what I'm looking for. Our investment portfolio. Empty. I can explain, Ryan says from the doorway. Everything was falling apart at work. After Henry pulled the contracts. So you emptied our accounts? My voice sounds distant, like it belongs to someone else. And her? Was she part of your financial recovery plan? She's Henry's daughter, he says, as if that explains everything. We thought, if he saw us together, if he believed we were serious. The laugh that escapes me doesn't sound human. You used me leaving as cover. All those yoga classes, all those late nights, you were orchestrating your own scandal to manipulate her father. I tried to tell you, Claire interjects, about the company's troubles, about Ryan's plan. Shut up. I turn to Lila, who at least has the decency to look ashamed. Did Daddy's money make it worth it? Playing the other woman to save Ryan's career? It wasn't like that, she whispers. Not at first. I walk to the window, staring at the garden I used to tend before ambition called me away. Everything looks different now. The flowers I planted, the paths we laid together, even the sky above our house. Get out. My voice is ice. All of you. Athena, please. Ryan starts. I said get out! I whirl around, grabbing the nearest object, a crystal vase, our wedding gift, and hurling it against the wall. It shatters spectacularly, the sound like everything breaking at once. They leave. I stand in the wreckage of my marriage, my trust, my carefully constructed revenge, and realize I never saw the real betrayal coming. I was so focused on the affair that I missed the conspiracy. My phone buzzes, Simon congratulating me on the presentation, on my promotion, on my future. I delete it without responding. Some victories taste like ash. I spend 3 days gathering evidence, bank statements, email trails, security footage. Each piece fits together like a puzzle I never wanted to solve. Then I send one text. Dinner, tomorrow, your place. Ryan agrees too quickly. When I arrive, the table is set for 4. Claire and Lila are already there, looking like guilty conspirators at a Last Supper. Ryan's wearing the blue shirt I bought him last Christmas, his hands fidgeting with a wine glass. Family dinner? I set my laptop bag on the counter. How domestic. We need to talk, Ryan starts. About everything. Yes, let's talk. I open my laptop, turning it to face them. Let's talk about the offshore account you opened 3 months ago. Or the emails between you and Henry Thompson dating back to before I left for Carson. Lila's face pales. What emails? The ones where your father agreed to pull his contract strategically. Create a crisis that would force the company to accept new terms. I scroll through documents. Quite the performance, really. The devoted daughter falling for the desperate businessman. Did you practice your yoga poses between plotting sessions? It wasn't supposed to go this far, Claire interjects. Ryan just needed leverage. And you? I turn to her. Was being his lookout part of the original plan? Or did that come later? I was protecting him. From what? His wife? Or his conscience? Ryan steps forward. The company was dying. Henry Thompson had us in a chokehold. I had to do something. So you orchestrated an affair with his daughter? The laugh that escapes me sounds foreign. Used our marriage as collateral? It started as a plan, Lila says quietly. But things changed. Save it. I pull out my phone, pressing play on a recording. Henry Thompson's voice fills the room. The merger goes through next week. Once Ryan's company is absorbed, the board will need new leadership. Ryan lunges for the phone. I snatch it back, letting him see the screen. The message already forwarded to his entire board of directors. You didn't, he whispers. Didn't what? Expose your manipulation? Your fraud? I turn to Lila. The fact that you helped destroy your father's reputation for a man who was using you? That's not... She stops, looking at Ryan. Something shifts in her expression. Is it? The silence that follows is answer enough. I saved everything. I continue, my voice steady despite the trembling in my hands. Every message, every transaction, every carefully orchestrated coincidence. The board has it all now. So does the SEC. You've destroyed everything, Ryan says, but there's more fear than anger in his voice. No, you did that. I just made sure everyone could see the ruins. Claire stands suddenly. There are things you don't know, Athena, about why we had to... Had to? I cut her off. Had to empty our accounts? Had to use me as cover for your brother's schemes? Had to watch him manipulate a woman's feelings for financial gain? I loved her, Ryan protests, but even Lila flinches at the past tense. You loved what she represented. Access, opportunity, a way out of the mess you created. I close my laptop. But you forgot something crucial. What's that? His voice is barely a whisper. I learned manipulation from the best. I head for the door, then pause. Oh, and Ryan? Check your email. The divorce papers are there, along with a detailed account of your financial misconduct. I'd sign quickly if I were you. Things tend to get complicated once federal investigations begin. You wouldn't, Claire starts, but stops when she sees my expression. I already did. I look at each of them, my husband, his sister, his accomplice. The difference between your revenge and mine? I didn't need to pretend it was love. I leave them there, surrounded by the wreckage of their carefully constructed plans. My phone buzzes with messages. From the board, from Henry Thompson, from my lawyer. I ignore them all. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying everything. Sometimes it's about revealing the truth and letting it do the destroying for you. The headlines splash across my tablet screen during my morning coffee. Tech merger scandal rocks business community. Ryan's company's stock has plummeted. The SEC investigation is ongoing. Henry Thompson has stepped down as CEO. My phone buzzes with a text from an unknown number. Can we meet? Lila. I consider ignoring it, but curiosity wins. We meet at a small cafe across town, far from the yoga studio, far from my old life. She looks different, sharper somehow, like betrayal has carved away her softness. I didn't know, she says without preamble. About any of it. The merger, the manipulation, how he used both of us. Would it have mattered if you did? She stirs her untouched coffee. I thought I was helping him heal from losing you. Ironic, right? He never lost me. He gambled me. And now he's lost everything. She meets my eyes. Was it worth it? The revenge? I consider the question as Simon's latest email burns in my inbox. My promotion to executive vice president, the first woman to hold the position. Ask me when the SEC finishes their investigation. My father wants to make a deal, to save what's left of both companies. That's not my concern anymore. No, she agrees, but you might be interested in what I found in Ryan's emails. Things even you missed. She slides a USB drive across the table. I don't take it. Why are you really here, Lila? Because you and I? We're more alike than different. We both believed in something that wasn't real. She stands, leaving the drive. The difference is, you did something about it. At home, curiosity again proves stronger than caution. The drive contains emails dating back years, Ryan's slow descent into financial manipulation, Claire's growing involvement, plans within plans. But it's the most recent ones that stop me cold. Messages between Ryan and Claire, discussing contingency plans that would have left me taking the fall if their scheme had succeeded. My phone rings. It's my mother. I saw the news, she says. Are you okay? I'm fine. And surprisingly, I am. Claire came to see me. She wanted me to convince you to drop the charges. Of course she did. I told her my daughter doesn't need convincing of anything. A pause. I'm proud of you, Athena. The words hit harder than expected. For destroying my marriage? For refusing to be destroyed by it. After we hang up, I pour a glass of wine and open my laptop. There's an email from Ryan's lawyer, another from the SEC investigators, and one from Simon about my upcoming board presentation. But it's Lila's words that echo. We're more alike than different. I start typing an email to Henry Thompson. Not about deals or mergers or revenge, but about truth. His daughters, mine, all of it. Some things deserve to be dragged into the light, even if the truth burns everyone involved. My doorbell rings. It's Claire, looking haunted. You haven't seen the whole picture, she starts. Actually, I hold up the USB drive. I think I finally have. She pales. Athena. Save it for the investigators. I close the door, but not before adding, and Claire? Tell Ryan the next time he plans to frame his wife for corporate fraud, he should probably use a better password than our wedding date. Later, I sit in my garden, the one I'd neglected for ambition, the one Ryan used for his secret meetings, and watch the sunset. My phone lights up with a message from Lila. Thank you for copying my father on that email. Some truths need witnesses. I don't respond, but I save her number. Sometimes the strongest alliances rise from shared wreckage. The garden needs work, weeds to pull, flowers to replant, new seeds to sow. But this time, I'll grow something different, something stronger, something that doesn't need anyone else's validation to bloom. I open my laptop and begin typing my statement for the board. The first line reads, Success isn't about climbing higher, it's about standing firmer. Behind me, the sun sets on my old life, and I don't look back to watch it fade.
I bought a house that was astonishingly signed over to my sister by my parents just as I stopped making mortgage payments. Now, at 27, I'm repaying a mortgage on a house I no longer own. I was shocked to discover that my parents had gifted the house to my sister. This revelation was especially painful because they had never mentioned their plans to me. Growing up, I always felt that my parents favored my sister, but I never realized the extent of their preference. My parents lavished an enormous amount of affection on my sister, treating her like royalty. In contrast, they placed heavy demands on me from an early age, pushing me towards responsibility while allowing my sister, Hazel, to live freely without academic pressures. While I was immersed in my studies, Hazel was encouraged to explore her interests and hobbies. After high school, despite having my own savings, I suggested that my parents co-sign a student loan for me. They refused, citing the high interest rates, and instead, they used their savings and went into debt to pay for my technical school education. At 17, I didn't understand the financial implications and trusted their judgment, thinking they were protecting me from future financial burdens. As soon as I graduated and landed a stable CEO job, the weight of their expectations became apparent. They often reminded me of the sacrifices they made for my education and expected a return on their investment. Initially, I thought they were just trying to keep me grounded, but over time, it felt more like emotional manipulation. Every visit home was filled with relentless questions about my career progress from my father. I could never escape the reminder of the financial sacrifices they made for my education. Within a year of starting my job, I found myself buying a house for them, hoping to repay their efforts. However, the situation turned sour when I learned they had transferred the house to my sister, leaving me financially and emotionally strained. When I came back home during the holiday season, my dad looked at me intently across the dinner table and dropped a bombshell that really jolted me. "We've done our part in supporting your education. Now it's time for you to start planning to buy us a house. Living in rented spaces isn't a permanent solution." Those words made my stomach twist in knots. I knew they expected me to purchase a home, but I hadn't anticipated the pressure coming so soon. I had only been working for a year and was still splitting an apartment rent with 3 roommates. Owning a home was beyond my financial reach at that point, despite my parents' insistence and the bank's reluctance to lend to someone so early in their career. "Why are you asking this of me now?" I asked, bewildered. My father paused, then explained, "We taught you to set goals and work hard to achieve them." My mother added softly but firmly, "Without our sacrifices, you wouldn't have your education or the opportunities you have now. We want you to acknowledge that." Though I felt overwhelmed, I couldn't deny the truth in their words. They had sacrificed a lot for me, but there were times I found their expectations stifling, and I secretly wished to confront them about it. However, I lacked the courage and instead started to withdraw from them. I would only reach out during emergencies, skipping regular visits. Driven by a sense of duty, after 1 year of diligent saving and hard work, I eventually bought them a house. It was a simple, cozy home in a tranquil area, nothing fancy, but warm and inviting. I hoped this would repay them in some way for everything they'd done. I managed the mortgage payments for 2 years, making extra efforts to keep the house secure. But deep down, I harbored other dreams, owning my personal home, traveling, and starting a family. I knew I couldn't shoulder the financial burden indefinitely. Once the house was purchased, my parents' relentless reminders ceased. They often boasted to friends and relatives about how their investment in my education had finally paid off. While I didn't focus much on their bragging, the emotional distance between us persisted. I maintained my space, rarely visiting. One day, after a particularly demanding period at work, I decided it was time for a visit, hoping to mend fences a bit. As I drove up, I noticed my sister Hazel's car in the driveway, sparking a flicker of excitement about a potential family reunion. It had been years since Hazel, now married and living elsewhere, had been together with us. The last memory I had of her was at her wedding. When I knocked, Hazel opened the door in her pajamas, suggesting she might just be there for a quick visit. When we met, we exchanged warm greetings and shared a hug. She casually asked, "Hey, what brings you here?" To which I jokingly retorted, "I was about to ask you the same." As I made my way inside, curiosity led me to inquire about the whereabouts of our parents. From her comfortable spot on the sofa, Hazel nonchalantly mentioned, "Oh, they've moved out." Her words caught me off guard. "Moved out? What do you mean?" "This is their house," I questioned further. With a shrug, Hazel explained, "Well, I guess they didn't mention it to you, but they've given me the house." I live here now. The news felt surreal, almost as if the floor beneath me shifted. This house, the one I've been helping to pay for? I asked, trying to grasp the reality of her casual revelation. Yes, she replied. Mom and Dad decided I needed it more than you, especially with a baby on the way. I was stunned by the decision made without my input. Pressing for more information, I asked where our parents were now residing. They're renting an apartment across town, she responded as if it was the most normal circumstance. Feeling a mix of betrayal and confusion, I left in silence. My mind raced with frustration as I drove to confront our parents at their new apartment. Upon arrival, my mother opened the door, and I immediately demanded, "What's going on?" "Hazel told me you gave her the house I've been contributing towards." "Explain yourselves." My mother, trying to diffuse my anger with a calm demeanor, invited me inside. "Calm down, let's talk," she suggested. But I was there for answers, not small talk. "Why would you give away the house without even discussing it with me? Wasn't it important for me to know?" She sighed, seemingly frustrated by my questions. "Frankly, we've thought this through. You're successful enough to not worry about housing. But Hazel? With her new child, owning a house means she won't have to worry about rent and can provide a stable environment for her family." Her rationale only fueled my anger. "I don't see why my niece or nephew can't grow up in a rental like we did. It shouldn't be my responsibility to ensure their financial stability. That's on Hazel and her husband. They should work towards better financial conditions themselves." At that moment, my father joined in, attempting to justify their decision. "Hazel needs this stability. We couldn't provide for her like we did for you. She didn't go to college, remember? She deserves a chance at stability." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "But that was her choice to drop out of high school, and now you're penalizing me for her decisions?" They seemed oblivious to the gravity of their actions. "You're already well off. You can afford another house," they said dismissively. Their words left me reeling, feeling as if my world had been turned upside down. My investment in the family home wasn't just financial, it was emotional, and their casual dismissal of my contributions left a deep rift between us. I found myself unable to grasp their reasoning and left their apartment in a whirlwind of confusion. I checked into a hotel to unwind and have been here ever since. Moving forward seems daunting. I can't simply let this go. After uncovering the truth, I am determined not to continue paying the mortgage, but the situation is complex. My parents are unable to afford the payments, though my sister might manage. This entire ordeal began on Friday, and today is Sunday. My flight home is booked for Tuesday, but after calming down, I realize there's more to address. Since I've been paying more than necessary, the mortgage should be close to being paid off. I had texted my father to inquire about the remaining mortgage balance, and he said he'd confirm with the loan manager. Determined, I messaged him to meet at the bank the next day to check the exact outstanding amount. While I have no desire to continue with the payments, I need to understand everything clearly. Buying the house was a substantial contribution on my part, and it's apparent now that my family has taken my generosity for granted. I am not obligated to fund a house that is no longer in my name. Discussing this with my parents is necessary, but I must emphasize that I can't support property transferred without my consent. Then, a heart-wrenching truth emerged when I visited the bank. The extra mortgage payments I made were never applied. Instead, my father was using the excess to cover their apartment rent. This was a shocking revelation, especially since I've been living frugally to pay off the mortgage early. The bank manager showed me the deposit records, and it was clear I had been paying about 10.0 times the required amount. I questioned this, and upon reviewing the transaction history, it was evident how much I had sent each month. My father insisted the records were correct, and although he seemed confused or misunderstanding, he confirmed the payments were accurate. His words left me devastated. During the meeting, I sat quietly as the manager discussed the remaining mortgage details and loan consolidation options. When the manager left, my father pulled me aside to inquire about the extra payments. Raising my voice, I affirmed they were meant for the mortgage. What he said next left me stunned. Initially, I believed the account I was contributing to was meant for our daily expenses. However, I later discovered that the funds were actually being used to cover the rent. When this truth came out, it left me in shock. I slumped into a chair, overwhelmed, wondering how I could possibly explain this to my parents. Sitting beside me, my father tried to downplay the situation, insisting it wasn't a significant issue. This only fueled my frustration. He casually mentioned that the money I had sent, thinking it would help with buying a house, had instead just covered regular mortgage payments, and any extra funds had been diverted to rent for a new apartment. He argued that since he wasn't asking for more money, I shouldn't see it as a problem. His words struck me deeply, revealing a betrayal I couldn't easily dismiss. I was infuriated, arguing that the additional payments were intended to decrease the mortgage principal, not to subsidize his living adjustments. After our heated conversation, I left the bank and walked away, ignoring his calls and my mother's messages begging me to return home to discuss it further. At that moment, I resolved to take a stand against their unreasonable expectations. Shocked and angry, I realized the importance of setting clear boundaries. Despite being generous by nature, it was evident that my parents were taking advantage of my goodwill. I decided to cut off communication, prioritizing my own emotional and financial well-being. Determined to end my involvement, I did not send the usual mortgage payment at the beginning of the next month. My father's attempts to reach me were in vain as I had blocked his number, along with my mother's, my sister Hazel's, and her husband's. When my parents realized I had ceased the payments, their frantic attempts to contact me through different numbers only pushed me further away. Returning home from work one day, I found my father angrily waiting at my doorstep. He accused me of owing them for the sacrifices they made, including paying for my college education. But at that point, I was resolute. This financial entanglement was no longer my concern. I had made the tough decision to stop enabling their manipulation, even if it meant severing ties to protect my own peace. My journey to self-liberation was long and fraught with confrontation. It began the day I finally confronted my parents about the endless financial responsibilities they expected me to shoulder. They often reminded me that they were the architects of my success, to which I responded that the financial support I had already provided surpassed even the cost of my college education. Despite their insistence on my owing them, I made it clear that I had settled any implied debts. My father branded me ungrateful, but I couldn't let that derail me. I told him bluntly that his attempts to make me feel guilty were futile and that I was done subsidizing their lives. It was a decisive moment. I rejected the notion of being treated like an asset in which they had invested, expecting perpetual returns. With resolve, I left, distancing myself from the toxic environment. I didn't return home, partly out of fear that they might pursue me. Later, when I snuck back, my father had left, and although my mother and Hazel tried to reach me, accusing me of abandoning them, I stood firm. This marked the end of their manipulative hold over me. The financial repercussions were immediate. The house, a point of contention, spiraled into foreclosure as Hazel failed to keep up with the payments. My parents, already burdened by their own rent, found themselves unable to manage without my financial support. About a year later, the house was put on the market again. In a desperate bid, my parents attempted to reclaim it using their scant savings, but were unsuccessful. The house eventually went to auction. From the sale, my father managed to recuperate a notable sum. It was a painful but necessary closure for them. They relinquished their hold on the house, accepting the reality of their situation. As for me, the years of financial contributions towards the house, which I initially viewed as support, I no longer expect to be reimbursed. They never intended to repay me, and I have come to terms with that. My parents have since downsized their living situation and started to save for their future, focusing on self-sufficiency in their retirement. They also ceased financially supporting Hazel, insisting she assume responsibility for her own family. Now, living independently in my own apartment, I feel a profound sense of peace and freedom. Cutting ties with my family was a difficult choice, but it was essential for my personal growth and financial independence. The path has been tough, but it has led me to a place where I can finally prioritize my own needs without guilt. I've made a commitment to my own well-being by beginning to save for a home that will truly belong to me. Creating distance from family is never an easy decision, but it becomes necessary when those closest to you fail to treat you with the respect you deserve. Over time, I've come to understand that even loved ones can sometimes take advantage of your generosity. Making the choice to step back was difficult, and though it's painful to hear about the troubles within my family, it's important for them to see the results of their actions. I stand by my decision firmly because everyone, regardless of their relation to you, should treat you with dignity and not see you merely as a financial resource. I'm a 15-year-old girl who recently experienced something quite hurtful surrounding my parents' wedding in Hawaii. My parents, who have been together for 20 years, decided to tie the knot. The proposal happened on their anniversary, a date that's always been special since it's also when my mom discovered she was pregnant with my eldest sister. The whole family was thrilled about the wedding announcement. As plans unfolded, it was evident the wedding would be an intimate affair with close family and friends. My sister, 25, was chosen as the maid of honor and my brother, 20, as the groomsman. Their roles made sense given their close bonds with our parents, my sister with our mom and my brother with our dad. As for me, I've always felt somewhat on the periphery of the family dynamics, often feeling like an outsider. Despite this, I wasn't too bothered initially about not having a defined role in the wedding. There was brief talk of me being the flower girl, but that quickly shifted to my niece, and other suggestions like reading a poem were dismissed by my parents who wanted to keep the event simple. However, as the wedding planning progressed, I felt increasingly excluded. My family didn't involve me in activities like dress shopping or venue discussions. I hoped they might eventually include me, but an invitation never came. Then, just a day before we were supposed to leave for Hawaii, my mom offhandedly asked if I was packed for the trip. I hadn't prepared at all, simply because no one had actually confirmed my attendance or discussed travel details with me. This oversight led to a misunderstanding, and in the confusion, it came out that they had forgotten to get me a ticket. Compounding the hurt, my family mistakenly told others I wouldn't attend because I had COVID-19. To clear up these false claims, I posted my negative COVID test online and openly corrected their narrative. This situation really highlighted my feelings of isolation within my family, a dynamic where I often feel overlooked and less valued. It was a painful realization, especially during what was supposed to be a joyful family occasion. I once inquired if I even had a ticket for the upcoming family event, and her reaction was telling. Her face went pale, confirming they had indeed forgotten to include me. Despite being the only one in my family with an unstable income, earning as a part-time children helpful, my parents had managed to arrange first-class tickets for my siblings and some friends for the wedding. But I was overlooked. When I brought it up, my mom dismissed it, suggesting they could simply snag a cheap, last-minute ticket from a budget airline. I then questioned the point of even having a dress for the ceremony, given that I had been excluded from the shopping trips that included my sister and other guests. My father's response was for me to just deal with it, implying that my less feminine demeanor meant it shouldn't bother me. His words stung because, despite not being overly girly, being part of these moments mattered to me. It hurt to be sidelined in the preparations for such a crucial family event. This escalated into a full-blown argument where I was labeled entitled and accused of trying to make myself invisible so they'd overlook me. An absurd notion. They ended up suggesting I might as well miss the event entirely if I continued to protest, to which I responded with a defiant agreement and retreated to my room. The next morning, they left for Hawaii without me. The wedding was small, yet they flooded social media with pictures, praising the magical week. People noticed my absence and questioned my parents, who lied, claiming I had to stay behind due to COVID. Frustrated, I took a COVID test, posted the negative result online, and clarified I was not sick, just forgotten. I tagged all the guests and those who had asked about my absence, openly sharing how I was excluded until the very last moment and ultimately uninvited. The backlash was immediate. My post overshadowed the wedding celebrations. At first, I felt justified in standing up for myself, but the harsh criticism from my family upon their return made me doubt my actions. They condemned my behavior as immature and spoiled. This response, combined with the ongoing tension at home, left me feeling miserable and questioning if there might have been a better way to handle everything. Now, still living under their roof as a minor, I'm left feeling trapped and deeply unsettled by the whole ordeal. I find myself grappling with feelings of guilt over the strained relationships within my family, wondering if I could have done more to bridge the gaps. Regrettably, I even feel responsible for ruining my parents' wedding, an event they neglected to include me in. I've engaged with some commenters online, one of whom suggested moving in with my grandmother after noticing my family's repeated dismissive behavior toward me. This isn't a new pattern. They've consistently overlooked me, making me feel like an outsider. Legally, I know that at 15, no court would force me to stay in a home where I'm not wanted, as long as I have another place to go. I'm seriously considering gathering my essentials and starting anew. One commenter asked if I could possibly move in with my grandmother. Ideally, I would, but I'm about to start college classes soon. I've managed to negotiate a delayed start, but the challenge remains since my school is local and my grandmother lives out of state. Moving there would mean dropping out of college, which isn't feasible. I don't have much family support here, just friends, and I hesitate to impose on anyone. Another commenter inquired about dormitory options at my college. Unfortunately, I don't qualify for financial aid, and dorm costs are beyond my budget. A friend is renting a studio near campus, which she finds more economical. The original plan was for me to live at home during my studies, but now that's uncertain. My grandmother couldn't attend the wedding due to her health and mobility issues. She's always been supportive and has often pointed out my parents' favoritism. We communicate mostly through text since she lives in a different state. Although she's unaware of the full extent of what happened at the wedding, she reached out after seeing my post on Facebook. I haven't told her everything. I don't want to worry her. The absence of my extended family at the wedding wasn't surprising. My grandmother struggles with travel, and my uncles, who live nearby her, weren't invited. It was just my siblings, their partners, and a few of their friends, about 10 people in total. Another commenter reflected on the intentionality behind my family's actions, wondering about their motives for excluding me. It's difficult to say, but their close-knit nature and shared interests, which starkly contrast with my introverted preferences for quieter activities, seem to be factors. I've always felt different from my outgoing parents and siblings, who thrive in social settings and frequently host gatherings, which I tend to avoid. Growing up, I was incredibly shy, often retreating to my bedroom or the basement to escape social interactions. As I matured, I gradually began participating more in social gatherings, although it seemed my parents barely noticed my efforts to engage. Their apparent indifference left me searching for explanations and feeling somewhat dismissed. Recently, I reached out for support through a blog post, not expecting much, but the response was heartwarming. The surge of comments and messages filled with advice and shared experiences was overwhelming. This community support played a crucial role in helping me navigate my emotions during a challenging time. A few days ago, I was struggling with guilt and depression, exacerbated by harsh remarks from my family. However, the kindness from strangers online helped stabilize my spirits. Their words reminded me that I was not at fault, and it was comforting to feel understood and supported. Amidst this turmoil, I decided to confide in my grandmother. Although she lives far away and faces her own challenges, including recovering from a minor stroke, she's always shown me love and stood up for me against my parents' favoritism. During our phone call, I explained everything, including how my parents had not included me in a family wedding trip. She was incredibly supportive, affirming that their oversight was intentional rather than accidental. Her words brought me to tears, but they also brought comfort and clarity. Our conversation was a turning point. She reassured me of her unwavering support and encouraged me to start planning for my future, promising to help however she could. This guidance was invaluable, and after our 2-hour talk, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. I was ready to begin making decisions for the upcoming school year, inspired by her love and the support of my online community. I have a friend who will soon be moving to Lace's studio, near our future campus. She has always been close to her parents, but also has 5 younger siblings, and she feels it's time for her to become more independent. Because of this, she has decided to move out. When I mentioned that I was looking for a place to stay, she kindly offered to let me live with her temporarily. I promised to contribute to the rent once I secured a job. She graciously insisted that I need not worry about the rent until I am more financially stable. We shared a heartfelt moment when I confided in her about a recent family ordeal related to my parents' wedding. This conversation happened just a few days ago. Following this, my brother sent me a lukewarm apology via text, admitting he had realized I felt left out of a family trip and assumed I wouldn't enjoy it. Meanwhile, my sister accused me of airing personal issues publicly to gain sympathy, claiming that the rest of the family was blameless. Relations with my parents have been strained since they returned from their trip. Initially, they were quite upset with me, but after my grandmother's call, they suggested we all move past the incident. However, they implied it was my responsibility to stop talking about it, which led me to ask them to leave my room. I later called my grandmother to her, and she shared that she and my uncle had bought plane tickets to come and see me. While I'm touched by their support, I'm also concerned for my grandmother's health, given the challenges of travel. I tried to reassure her that we could manage without her visit, but she was adamant about coming to mediate. It's worrying, yet I can't help but look forward to a hug from her, even though I wish she wasn't putting herself through such stress. They are due to arrive tomorrow, and they haven't told my parents about their visit yet, at my grandmother's request. I'm anxious about her involvement, as much as I appreciate her efforts. I'm also preparing to tell my parents about my decision to move out and possibly cease contact, hoping my grandmother can help ease the conversation. Despite my worries about the burden on her, her love and determination mean the world to me. I've received numerous messages and comments, and I regret not being able to respond until now. I deeply appreciate everyone's support and kindness during this challenging time in my life. The overwhelming response has opened my eyes to how many others have faced similar experiences of neglect and abuse. I'm truly grateful to each of you for reaching out with comforting words to a stranger online. Recently, my grandmother called to inform me that she was coming to visit and support me. I was anxious about her visit because traveling is quite strenuous for her, and I felt responsible for the stress it would cause her. She arrived early Monday morning, accompanied by my uncle. I went to the airport to meet them, and the moment I saw her, I couldn't help but run into her arms, overwhelmed with emotion. At that moment, I couldn't articulate my feelings. I was crying too hard. I wanted to express my gratitude for her support, apologize for the inconvenience of her journey, and share my uncertainties about feeling unloved by my parents compared to the unequivocal love she has always shown me. When we met, the rush of emotions, guilt, anxiety, gratitude, all hit me simultaneously. But she embraced me tightly, assuring me that everything would be okay, with my uncle joining in to support us. After some time, we took a cab to their hotel. Despite her teary eyes and heavy breathing which worried me, my grandmother kept a comforting smile. She had booked a double room, so I could stay with her. Once settled, I shared everything with them. The years of emotional neglect and abuse I had endured, the toll it had taken on my well-being, and my plans to move out for the sake of my mental health, even if it meant sacrificing my schoolwork. I also mentioned my fears for the future and my recent suspicion, fueled by discussions online, that I might be the product of an affair, which had started to make sense to me. It was a heavy conversation, and I could see the impact it had on them, but they continued to provide comfort and reassurance. My grandmother, in particular, made it clear that she would always be there for me, affirming that I no longer needed to worry about my situation at home. Her reassurance was a tremendous relief, and it gave me the courage to begin planning a move to a friend's place and to start looking for a job to support myself. Thank you all once again for your kindness and for sharing your stories with me. Your support has been a beacon of hope and has significantly lightened my emotional load. I was always certain I wasn't a mistake. Both of my parents were ecstatic when they learned of my mother's pregnancy. They had made it clear that infidelity was an unforgivable betrayal in their marriage. However, as I grew up, I sensed a shift in their attitudes. Around the age of 3 or 4, I began to notice my parents' frustration with having a young child at home. They could easily involve my older siblings in their activities, but I was often left behind due to my shyness and tendency to cry easily, traits that made me quite different from my siblings. Despite their evident frustration, my parents were financially well off and had ensured that my education would be well funded. This financial security made the possibility of them withholding my college funds a distant concern until recent doubts surfaced. However, my aunt reassured me, promising to support my education and living expenses if necessary. She was adamant about not letting financial worries force me to drop out of college. Through all of this, I realized how privileged I had been financially. Growing up, I was showered with comforts: private schooling, a generous monthly allowance, a car, and no objections to my expenditures. This realization hit me hard when I compared my life to the more challenging circumstances others faced. I understood then how dependent I had been on my parents and how vulnerable that made me. I resolved to seek independence, not just financially, but in all aspects of life. Inspired by this newfound determination, I decided to accept my aunt's temporary support, but also committed to finding a job and forging my own path. After a tiring morning, we rested in a hotel before heading to my parents' house with my grandma and uncle in tow. Their presence was a shock to my parents. While they engaged in a heated conversation downstairs, I packed my essentials. The atmosphere was tense. My father was visibly upset, and my mother was tearful. When I descended with my belongings, ready to leave, my mother reached out to me, tearfully apologizing. But it was too late for apologies. I had made up my mind to start anew, driven by a desire for independence and a fresh start away from the turmoil of my childhood home. Responding in a chilled-out voice, I let my dad know that I didn't appreciate being treated harshly, prompting my uncle and grandma to intervene, telling him to ease up. At that point, I exited and waited outside for a cab to the hotel. There, my grandma comforted me, promising that I wouldn't have to return home. She explained that my college funding was secure and revealed that my parents had planned a lavish birthday celebration and a new car as peace offerings for the recent family drama. However, my grandma dismissed these gestures as mere attempts by my parents to maintain their social image. She was aware that these overtures were hastily concocted and wouldn't compensate for the years of neglect and exclusion from family gatherings. When my mom broke down after hearing that I had doubted my paternity, my grandma wasn't surprised. She pledged to handle my tuition payments if I chose to sever financial ties with my parents, which I did. I felt guilty, aware it wasn't my grandma's duty to support me, but I couldn't bear any more ties to my parents. Although not as affluent as my parents, my grandma reassured me she could manage, mentioning that the financial support she provided would be deducted from my mother's inheritance. The next day, accompanied by my friend and her parents, we inspected a studio apartment I was considering. It was smaller and more rundown than I had expected, complete with water damage, mold, and rusty appliances. Initially, I thought I could cope, but the adults pointed out the unsafe neighborhood and visible bullet holes in the building, changing our minds. We decided to hunt for a safer, two-bedroom apartment instead. My friend and I would contribute what we had initially budgeted for the studio, and our families would help with the extra costs. Despite striving for independence, I recognized this support as a necessity rather than a luxury, especially after the first-hand reality check at the studio. I was incredibly relieved when my friend's parents, who knew a bit about the difficulties I was facing, generously offered their home as a temporary refuge until I could find a suitable apartment. This came just in time, as my grandmother, who had been staying with me at a hotel, was due to return home in a few days. It was touching to learn that my friend, her parents, and my grandmother had coordinated this plan behind the scenes to ensure I had a safe place to transition to. I was deeply moved and thankful for their support, which brought tears to my eyes. In the meantime, I began moving my belongings from my parents' house and started to make space for myself at my friend's place. Each visit back home was tough. My mom would break down, repeatedly apologizing, and even my dad expressed his regrets. However, I kept my distance, feeling detached and unresponsive to their gestures. The situation with my siblings was complicated. My sister accused me of being harsh, but I ended the call abruptly, and blocked her before she could continue. My brother, on the other hand, sent a long, apologetic message acknowledging his ignorance of our parents' unfair treatment towards me. He expressed regret for his past assumptions and for allowing our parents to marginalize me over the years. I responded to him briefly, appreciating his words, but explaining that I needed space and wasn't ready to forgive yet. While I sensed his sincerity and noted that he hadn't been deliberately cruel like my sister, I still felt it necessary to maintain some distance for the time being. Despite the tension, I've decided not to sever ties completely with my brother as long as he respects my need for space. Keeping some connection, albeit minimal, seems prudent while the emotional wounds are still raw. Perhaps in the future, his actions will either confirm his changed attitude or reveal motives as unkind as the others. Amidst these family dynamics, I took a proactive step towards healing by scheduling an appointment with a therapist who specializes in counseling neglected teens. My first session, funded by my grandmother, is set for next week. Her support not only facilitated this important step, but also intensified my resolve to find a new, independent living situation where I can start afresh and build a more positive future. I'm currently looking for a job to ease the burden on my grandmother, who insists she's happy to help me, despite my repeated concerns. I start my classes or move into my apartment, but for now, I'm focusing on enjoying time with my grandmother and uncle and working on overcoming the guilt and depression that have troubled me for a long time. I want to express my deepest gratitude to this community for your kindness and support, and to those who shared their personal stories of facing similar challenges at a young age. Your stories have made me feel less alone and hopeful that things can improve if I put in the effort. I'm fortunate to have such an incredible support network of family and friends, and reaching out for help has been the best decision I've made. Opening up about my feelings to my loved ones and to you, my online friends, has been incredibly healing, so thank you from the bottom of my heart. As for my parents, the situation remains complicated. Whenever I've returned home to collect my belongings, my mother has been visibly upset, repeatedly apologizing, although we haven't discussed the details. My father has been more reserved, mostly silent, offering apologies that seem vague. I'm not sure if they are still processing everything that has happened or if they don't believe they've done anything wrong. It's all a bit overwhelming, and I haven't had the chance to fully process it myself. In terms of financing my education, there has been concern about whether my parents will contribute. My grandmother has made it clear that not attending college is not an option, regardless of my parents' financial support. She has firmly refused to let me take out student loans, offering to cover the costs herself if necessary. I'm determined not to let financial concerns affect my education, thanks to the support I have. I've decided to have my grandmother handle the expenses, as I prefer not to involve my parents. Knowing their tendencies, they might hold this over my head for a lifetime, as if I owe them something. I'm incredibly grateful that my grandma is willing and able to support me in this way. Sometimes I feel unworthy of her generosity. A commenter once mentioned to me not to feel guilty for being born into a well-off family. They pointed out that I seem more self-aware than many others from similar backgrounds. They advised that working and achieving independence from my family's wealth would be truly enriching and would open up many aspects of the world to me. They reassured me that being privileged doesn't automatically make me spoiled, and that striving to earn what I need can build character and teach valuable lessons, like how to deal with challenging people and situations, understand the value of time and money, learn about teamwork, and navigate societal structures. I'm thankful for having a safety net like my grandma. The commenter also encouraged me not to pay attention to anyone who might look down on me for this advantage. They emphasized that many people struggle to make ends meet, and they wouldn't wish that hardship on anyone just starting out. Recently, I've been reflecting on my background and the privileges I've taken for granted. After a significant disagreement with my parents about finances, a concept I rarely had to consider seriously, I turned to online communities for support. Reading about the struggles of others who faced financial difficulties from a young age or due to family conflicts has opened my eyes to my own disconnectedness from reality. I feel a mix of guilt and anger. Guilt for my naivety and anger on behalf of those who haven't had the same advantages. I'm learning to appreciate the support I receive and the comforts I've been afforded. Looking ahead, I aim to achieve independence and maintain an acute awareness of the hardships faced by those who grew up without the privileges of a spacious home, private schooling, and other benefits I had growing up. My name is Sophia, and my parents, they sat on our old green couch, smiling broadly at the camera. We're thrilled to share our wonderful news, Mom announced, her hand on her belly. After years of trying, we're finally expecting our son. Dad squeezed her shoulder. The doctors confirmed it yesterday. A boy at last, a chance to carry on the Marlowe name. Our family will be complete, Mom added, her eyes glistening with joyous tears. Sitting cross-legged on the carpet, I tried to process their words. This must have been when Mom was pregnant with my younger brother, Hudson. But something didn't add up. The timestamp on the video was from 12 years ago, and Hudson was only 2. Then it dawned on me. They had been hoping for a boy even before I was born. I was their first attempt, their initial disappointment. Sophia, what are you watching? My grandmother's voice made me jump. She stood in the doorway, a basket of freshly folded laundry in her arms. As she noticed the screen, the basket fell, scattering clothes all over the floor. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, hurrying to turn off the TV. "You weren't supposed to see that." "They always wanted a boy," I murmured, my voice barely a whisper. Grandma knelt beside me, her usual complaints of arthritis forgotten, pulling me into a hug. Her scent of lavender and freshly laundered clothes enveloped me, but it couldn't stop my tears. "Your parents," she began, then paused, searching for the right words. "Sometimes, adults have very specific desires, but that doesn't change your worth. Is that why they sent me to live with you?" I asked, pulling away to look at her face. Because I wasn't the boy they wanted? Her silence was all the confirmation I needed. I had been living with Grandma for the past year, thinking it was to give my parents space, or because I was special enough to help with her garden and her baking. Now, I realized they were preparing for a new start with Hudson. "Listen to me," Grandma said firmly, gripping my hands. "You are perfect just as you are. Some people might not see the treasure they have, but that doesn't make you any less valuable." Her words barely registered as I replayed every distant hug, every perfunctory, "That's nice, dear," and every absence at my school events. It all suddenly made sense. That night, as Grandma tucked me into bed, now permanently my room, I asked, "Do I have to go back home when the baby gets bigger?" "We'll figure it out together, sweet pea. Whatever happens, you'll always have me," she replied, smoothing my hair back. I nodded, but deep down, something had shifted. The little girl craving her parents' approval was fading, replaced by a burgeoning resolve. Little did I know, this was just the start of a long journey of self-discovery and resilience. Over the next 3 years at Grandma's, before my eventual return home, I was no longer just a child. I was someone learning to navigate and shape my path, slowly mastering a game of perseverance and inner strength. As I stepped into the room, it was overrun with toys, with every surface adorned with colorful alphabet blocks. The background was filled with the constant babble of my younger brother, Hudson. My own bedroom had been transformed into his playroom, and my belongings were shifted to the smaller guest room at the end of the hall. "Hudson needs the space more," Mom explained, avoiding eye contact. I nodded in agreement. That's what is expected of a well-behaved child. Yet there's a vast difference between understanding and truly accepting. It quickly became apparent that my new role was that of Hudson as caretaker. As Mom and Dad lavished attention on every one of his actions, I was always by his side, ensuring he was safe. "Watch your brother, don't let him put that in his mouth," and "Why weren't you watching when he tried to climb the bookshelf?" were frequent commands directed at me. On a particularly warm afternoon, Mom asked me to take energetic and fearless 3-year-old Hudson to the park. I sat on a bench, watching him explore the playground. A friend from school approached. "Lila, where have you been?" she asked. For a short time, as we chatted about school and upcoming events, I felt like a regular 8-year-old again. Then, a scream snapped me back to reality. Hudson had climbed to the top of the play structure and was dangerously close to the edge. My heart raced as I ran towards him, but I wasn't quick enough. He fell, landing with a thud that echoed across the playground. The following hours were a blur of flashing emergency room lights and the sharp tones of my parents scolding. Hudson was fine. Only a sprained wrist and a few bruises, but the way Mom and Dad reacted, you would think I had pushed him. How could you be so irresponsible? Dad yelled in the hospital corridor. He could have been killed. I only looked away for a moment. I whispered, but Mom interrupted. A moment is all it takes. We trusted you with one thing, Lila. One simple thing. A pediatric nurses gave me a sympathetic glance, but hurried on. As my parents continued their reprimand, through the emergency room window, I saw Hudson happily playing with a toy car, his wrist in a bright blue cast, oblivious to the chaos. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I tiptoed to the kitchen for water. I overheard Mom's voice from the living room, filled with doubt. Maybe we made a mistake bringing her back so soon. She's clearly not ready for this responsibility. Dad responded, we can't afford a nanny, and your mother's too old to handle Hudson full-time. I thought she'd be more mature by now, more like the son they wanted. I completed her sentence silently. Retreating to my room, I took out the emergency phone Grandma had given me. I hovered over her number, but then I hesitated. Running to Grandma every time wasn't the answer. I was beginning to realize something crucial. If I wanted my parents' approval, I'd have to earn it. And if not, maybe I could make them regret underestimating me. Looking at my reflection in the dark window, a new resolve flickered in my eyes. Game on, I whispered to my reflection. Let's show them what the disappointing daughter can do. Little did I know, that night would mark the beginning of a plan that would take years to unfold, but would ultimately change everything. By 9, I had learned to move silently through our house, becoming a ghost in my own home. And it was during one of these silent moments that I overheard another conversation that would change everything yet again. Late one evening, as I tiptoed towards the kitchen craving a midnight snack, the murmur of voices halted me. Light seeped through a crack in the door of Dad's study, casting a slender beam across the shadowed hallway. Inside, Dad was discussing finances. The market's been kind to us. If we begin investing now, we should have ample savings for Hudson's college fund when the time comes. I stopped dead in my tracks, stunned. A college fund for Hudson? This was news to me. Mom chimed in, her voice tinged with curiosity. What about that private high school you mentioned earlier? Riverdale Prep, wasn't it? It's pricey, but maybe we could swing it with a few adjustments to our portfolio. Hudson's showing promise in baseball. This could be his chance at a scholarship. Leaning against the wall, my heart pounded. Hudson, only 7 and a month into Little League, was already having his future meticulously planned. Then Mom's voice softened. And what about Sophia's college? She's starting in a few years. A pause hung in the air, followed by the clink of ice in a glass. Sophia's clever. She'll land scholarships if she puts in the effort. Worst case, she can start at a community college, Dad reasoned. Mom sighed, conceding, that's true. She's always been resourceful. Biting my lip, I fought back tears. Resourceful? More like I had no other option. The next morning at breakfast, I watched Mom meticulously cut pancakes for Hudson while my cereal sagged unappealingly. Dad quizzed Hudson on multiplication. What's 7 times 8? He asked. 47. Hudson replied, earning a hair ruffle and praise. I cleared my throat. I scored an A+ on my biology test. Mr. Peterson said it was one of the highest he's seen in years. That's nice, dear. Mom responded distractedly, her focus still on Hudson. Oh, and remember you're watching him after school today. Your dad and I are meeting with his baseball coach. Something inside me snapped. Actually, I can't. I have a study group for the AP exams, I stated, more assertively than usual. Mom frowned. Since when? Last month. I've told you 4 times. They hadn't really listened, not that it mattered. You'll need to reschedule. This meeting is crucial for your brother, Dad insisted without looking up. I stood abruptly, my chair scraping loudly. And what about my future? A heavy silence fell. Hudson stopped eating, his eyes wide as he looked between us. Mom's voice was stern. "Sophia, we need to talk about your attitude." "No. We need to talk about how you plan Hudson's life while expecting me to fend for myself." My voice cracked with emotion. Dad placed his coffee cup down calmly. "You're overreacting. We support your education." "Really?" My laugh was bitter. Then why discuss community college for me while planning elite schools for him? They looked stunned. Mom's hand flew to her neck, a nervous gesture I knew well. "You are eavesdropping," Dad accused, his tone sharp. "I live here too," I retorted, my voice firm. "But it's clear now, Hudson's the priority, and I'm just an afterthought." Grabbing my backpack, I stormed out, ignoring their calls to return. As I walked to school, a resolve formed within me. They wanted independence. I'd excel on my own terms. They'd regret overlooking me. That day, I skipped watching Hudson and instead plotted my future in the library, researching scholarships and planning my escape. They could focus on their golden child. I was playing the long game. The day Stanford's acceptance letter arrived, coinciding with Hudson's first home run, only one made the family album. Holding the thick, cream envelope in the kitchen, I knew which achievements truly mattered to them. Growing up, my parents always seemed more impressed by my younger brother Hudson B's achievements in baseball than by my academic accomplishments. At 14, he was already a standout athlete, while at 18, I was excelling academically. The difference in attention we received was stark, and it came into sharp relief the day I announced I had won a full academic scholarship to Stanford. My hands trembled as I spoke, but my voice remained steady. In the middle of celebrating Hudson's latest game, I shared my news. Mom barely looked up from scrubbing his uniform as she muttered a distracted congratulations. When I specified it was Stanford, Dad commented that a local community college would have been more practical given the cost of living in California, even with my scholarship. I countered firmly that I wouldn't need any financial help, making it clear I was achieving this on my own. That moment seemed to catch their attention, perhaps for the first time in years. A flicker of something, pride, maybe concern, crossed Mom's face. But before she could say more, Hudson burst in with news from his coach, and just like that, the focus shifted back to him. Later that evening, overhearing my parents in the study, I felt the sting of their words. They were discussing my decision to move across the country, labeling me selfish for not considering Hudson's needs. My heart sank as Dad revealed they had drained my college savings, $7,000 I had saved from summer jobs and birthday checks to cover Hudson as sports expenses. When confronted, Dad justified it by saying the money was in their names and they made decisions for the whole family. The realization that I'd barely featured in our family's narrative hit hard. Not a single recent photo of me was displayed in our home, just endless images of Hudson's baseball milestones. I questioned if I still belonged to this family, only to be dismissed by Dad's patronizing response. But something in me hardened. I resolved that attending Stanford would be enough to prove my worth. I shared everything with my grandmother. She encouraged me, hinting that the best kind of revenge was simply doing better for myself. Strengthened by her words, I decided to focus on my future, not on trying to win back the affection that should have been mine by right. As I prepared to leave for college, I packed not just essentials, but also evidence of their neglect, bank statements, videos, and letters. I knew a day might come when they'd need me, and I'd be prepared. My first year at Stanford was tough. Balancing 3 part-time jobs with my studies to make ends meet, I watched my perfect grades slip. The irony of my situation wasn't lost on me. While I struggled, my parents likely continued to invest in Hudson's sporting future. Then a family emergency called me back home. My grandmother needed surgery after a fall. Despite my mother's protests, I flew back to support her, maxing out my credit card to do so. Seeing Grandma so vulnerable reminded me why I had fought so hard for my independence. Her smile when she saw me confirmed it was worth every sacrifice. "Little bird," she called me, her voice weak, but filled with love. "You shouldn't have come all this way," she said, but I knew it was exactly where I needed to be. As I entered the room, I approached her with caution, gently taking her hand, being mindful of the tension in the air. "Why didn't you just call me?" she asked, averting her gaze. "I didn't want to alarm you," I replied. She then brought up a sensitive issue. "Your mother mentioned you've been struggling in your classes." I was taken aback. She said your grades were dropping and you might lose your scholarship. The room suddenly felt claustrophobic. Despite leaving for college months ago, my parents hadn't reached out once. Yet, they'd been discussing my alleged academic failures with Grandma. I asserted confidently, my grades are actually fine. And if they weren't, it'd be because I'm juggling 3 jobs to make ends meet since they drained my savings. Grandma's expression grew stern. "They did what?" Before I could elaborate, my parents walked in, my mother with fresh flowers, my father with a newspaper under his arm. They stopped dead when they saw me. "Sophia," my mom said, attempting to recover, "we told you not to come." Ignoring her, I stood up slowly. "Funny how you suddenly have opinions about my choices," I said. "Why are you lying about my grades?" My dad stepped forward. "We're just worried you're not focusing on your studies because of all the jobs." I couldn't help but laugh, though it was devoid of humor. That's rich, coming from those who stole my savings for my siblings' sports training. "Lower your voice," my mother snapped, annoyed. "This isn't the place." It was then that Grandma interjected softly, yet firmly, cutting through the tension like a knife. "They took your savings?" she asked. I nodded, feeling the weight of the revelation. "I've been sending you $700 every month for your education. What happened to that money?" The room went silent. My parents avoided eye contact. "What money?" I asked slowly. "I've been sending it since you started college," Grandma continued. I was stunned. Nearly $20,000 over 3 years that never reached me. "You've been?" I couldn't even finish my sentence, my hands shaking as I gripped the bed rail. I reflected on all the nights I went hungry, all the times I nearly dropped out because I couldn't afford textbooks. "We needed it for Hudson's college fund," my mother whispered. "We thought since you had a scholarship—" "Get out," Grandma demanded in a steel voice. "Both of you, get out of my room now." They left without a word, but I barely noticed. I was consumed by thoughts of all the hours I'd worked, the meals I'd skipped, the nights I'd cried myself to sleep. "Little bird," Grandma reached for my hand. "We're going to fix this together." I looked at her, the woman who had always been my real guardian, and made a decision.
"No, Grandma.
I'm going to fix this. And they're going to regret every penny they took. It wasn't just about revenge now, it was about justice. And I was just getting started. Years later, after graduation, I was a portfolio manager at a tech firm in San Francisco. I had my own apartment and was financially stable enough to ensure Grandma lived comfortably. I thought I had moved past my family drama until I met Luca. He was unlike anyone I'd ever known. He laughed easily, loved deeply, and could see through my walls. On our 3rd date, he asked about my family. "It's complicated," I began, stirring my coffee. "Try me," he encouraged. So I told him everything about the deceit, about Hudson, about the stolen money. He listened without judgment and then took my hand. "They didn't deserve you," he said simply. We married 4 months later with only Grandma present. I was truly happy for the first time in my life. Then the email came. "Your brother's been arrested," my mom wrote. "We need your help." I deleted it without a second thought, but more messages followed, pleading for $90,000 for legal fees. "Tell them no," Lucas said when I showed him the emails. "You don't owe them anything." He was right, and I knew it. But that night, I lay awake, recalling my little brother's wide-toothed smile, his hand in mine as we walked to the park. Was I becoming just like them, choosing who deserved love and who didn't? The decision was made for me when I discovered I was pregnant. Looking at the positive test, everything shifted. I made a solemn vow to my unborn child that I would be the one to break the cycle of favoritism in our family. When I wrote to my parents, I made it clear that I would no longer be their fallback option. Finn arrived into the world on a rainy Tuesday in March, perfect in every way with his tiny fingers and toes, and eyes that seemed to contain boundless wisdom. Holding him, I felt an overwhelming sense of what my own parents had failed to provide. "He's beautiful," Grandma whispered as she touched his cheek. She had moved to San Francisco after her surgery and became for Finn the doting grandmother she had been to me. Then a letter arrived, not an email, but a formal one on heavy paper with an official letterhead. It was from the attorneys of William, stating they were filing for bankruptcy protection after mortgaging their house to cover Hudson's legal expenses. They were now losing everything, and the letter concluded with a plea for financial help, citing family obligations. As I read and reread the letter in my kitchen while Finn napped upstairs, the irony of the term family obligations they had never extended to me, struck me hard. Luca found me an hour later, the crumpled letter still in my hand. "They want money," I stated flatly. His question about what I would do hung in the air. The family photos on our wall, images filled with genuine love and joy like Finn's first smile and our wedding, reminded me of what true family looked like. "I don't know," I whispered, torn. Helping them felt like perpetuating the abuse. Not helping felt like self-protection. Luca suggested, "If you don't, you're protecting yourself and your son." But with Finn in my life, I realized the deep, lasting marks even neglectful parents leave. That night, I wrote 2 checks, one for my parents' mortgage company and one for a trust fund for Finn, ensuring different futures for each. "This isn't forgiveness," I noted in the letter accompanying the checks. "This is goodbye." I sealed the envelope, aware that this likely wasn't the end. They would probably ask for more. I had never planned to attend that Thanksgiving dinner, but Grandma's health concerns and her wish for one last family gathering drew me back to my childhood home. 4-year-old Finn clutched my hand tightly as we entered, the house heavy with a sense of turkey and underlying tension. My parents welcomed Finn warmly but barely acknowledged me. Dad and Hudson were engrossed in football, ignoring my presence. Only Grandma, busy in the kitchen, kept me from leaving immediately. Dinner began quietly until Finn innocently shattered the facade by comparing his grandparents to a piggy bank used only when needed. The room fell silent. As tension mounted, I seized the moment to confront my family about their calls for financial help throughout the year, each one centered on their needs, not mine. "When is the time?" I challenged as Dad tried to shut down the conversation. "When you need another check." Turning to Hudson, I revealed the truth about how his college fund came at the expense of my savings and Grandma's contributions intended for my education. Dad's angry outburst cut through the room, but I stood firm, pointing out the only family member who had genuinely cared, Grandma, who now watched with tears in her eyes. I declared that I was done enabling their behavior as I placed an envelope on the table containing records of every penny they had taken, along with a copy sent to my lawyer. "This isn't a threat," I clarified as I prepared to leave. "I'm setting you free. You no longer need to pretend to care about me." With that, I walked out, leaving behind the obligations that had weighed me down for so long, ready to build a future with those who truly valued me. I collected Finn, who nestled his face in my neck, as I made it clear to my mother. "You'll never treat my son the way you did me. He'll never experience being the unwanted child," I told her firmly. Tears streamed down her face as she pleaded, reminding me they were still my parents. I responded gently but firmly, "No, you simply showed me the type of mother I never want to be." As I turned to leave, I paused to add, "And one more thing. I've set up a trust fund for Finn, one that you can't touch." That's what real parents do. They safeguard their children's futures, not sabotage them. As we walked away, my grandmother joined us, walking with dignity. Behind us, I could hear my mother's cries and my father's furious voice. For the first time, I felt free from the burden of their emotions. In the car, Finn, looking concerned, asked if Thanksgiving was still on for next year. "Yes, baby," I reassured him, smiling at Luca's supportive look in the rearview mirror. "But from now on, we celebrate only with those who truly know how to love." 4 months later, after that Thanksgiving, I received an envelope from my parents' lawyer. Inside was the deed to their house, signed over to me following their bankruptcy, and moved to a modest home closer to my brother Hudson's new job. The favored child had faltered, and they had faltered with him. Sitting in Grandma's garden, watching Finn help her plant spring bulbs, I pondered the weight of the envelope in my lap. Grandma, wiping the dirt from her hands, remarked, "Your mother was just like her parents. They favored her brother too. That's why I tried so hard with you." I was taken aback. "Really?" I asked, surprised. "Yes, and I watched history repeat itself, powerless to stop it, just as I couldn't stop your mother from becoming what she despised." The revelation struck me profoundly. All these years, I had thought I was navigating this journey alone, yet here was Grandma, bearing similar wounds, fighting similar battles. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" I asked. She gave me a sad smile. "Would it have really helped? Some lessons we have to learn on our own. The important part is what we do with those lessons." Finn ran over, beaming with pride, eager to show us the flowers he'd helped plant. Luca's discovery of a worm during his playful exploration outdoors left him with a sparkle in his eyes and earth-stained hands. In that pure, unguarded moment, I realized what true inheritance was. It wasn't about financial wealth or property, but the ability to embrace love unreservedly and find happiness in the simplest of activities. That evening, as I sat in our home office surrounded by old family photographs, Luca walked in and gently massaged my shoulders, asking what was on my mind. "I'm reflecting on how easy it is to perpetuate hurt," I answered. He quickly reminded me, "But you didn't. You chose to break that pattern." The following day brought an unexpected visit from Hudson, who seemed worn and weary, a stark contrast to the radiant, confident figure he once was. Standing awkwardly in our living room, he confessed his ignorance about the family's financial dealings and the impact they had on me. "You are just a child," I responded softly, acknowledging our shared innocence. He expressed a desire to make amends, even though it would take time. "Keep the money," I interrupted. "Use it to rise above what we were taught." He departed with tears in his eyes and a vow to be a better role model for Finn, my son. I was unsure if I believed him, but I realized that my joy no longer hinged on their moral redemption. That night, I penned 2 letters, one to my parents, returning the deed to their house with a note explaining that it served as payment for the life lessons they imparted about what I should avoid as a parent. The other letter was for Finn, meant to be opened on his 19th birthday, detailing the truths of our family's past, not to weigh him down, but to illustrate how love can illuminate a path forward. As I sealed Finn's letter, laughter and warmth drifted from the kitchen below, where he and his grandmother were baking cookies with Luca. The joyful noise made me realize that my understanding of revenge had evolved. It was no longer about inflicting pain, but about healing and reclaiming my peace. Descending to join them, I found the kitchen alive with the aroma of vanilla and the joyous chaos of baking. We made cookies, but they're a bit messy, Luca chuckled, flour speckling his hair. "They're perfect," I assured him, and I truly believed it. Because sometimes, the best form of liberation isn't about evening the score, but in finding freedom. And freedom, I've come to understand, tastes wonderfully like slightly burnt cookies crafted with loving hands and joyful hearts.
My name is Delilah, a 25-year-old who unexpectedly found herself at a life-altering crossroads. Until a few years ago, I was just another assistant manager, internal audit, crunching numbers day in and day out. But everything changed when I landed a new job at a different firm, marking the beginning of a rather intriguing chapter in my life. It was there that I met Dylan, a sales representative executive whose confidence and charisma were as effective as his smile, one that could seemingly persuade anyone to buy anything, even ice to Eskimos. Our first encounter was by chance in the break room, initiated by the most temperamental coffee machine on the planet. "You are the new accountant, right?" Dylan said, leaning against the doorway with a playful smirk. "Guilty as charged," I replied, trying to maintain my composure despite the curiosity he sparked in me. "I'm Dylan, sales consultant and, unofficially, the coffee machine whisperer," he quipped with a wink. We laughed, and from that moment, our connection seemed inevitable. Fast forward 3 years, Dylan orchestrated the most enchanting marriage proposal during a beachside weekend getaway. It was straight out of a fairy tale. A sunset dinner followed by him on one knee. Overwhelmed with joy, I accepted without hesitation. Our wedding was a beautiful whirlwind, and soon after, we began our new life together in the charming old house I had inherited from my grandfather. A few weeks into our marriage, Dylan proposed an unexpected idea. "Babe, have you ever thought about being a housewife for a while?" he suggested one evening, hope shining in his eyes. I was taken aback. Despite my dedication to my career, his argument that he was doing well at work and could support us both, coupled with the promise of a stress-free life focused on us and maybe starting a family, was compelling. Eventually, his enthusiasm won me over, and I decided to embrace the change. Initially, the freedom was refreshing. I had time to explore hobbies like gardening, reading, and experimenting with new recipes. Dylan would return home to a tidy house and a homemade dinner, and our evenings were filled with discussions about the future and laughter. It felt like an extended honeymoon. However, as the weeks turned into months, I began to feel restless. I missed the challenges of my job, the buzz of solving complex problems, and even the constant noise of my office phone. Despite trying to suppress these feelings as mere adjustments, subtle shifts in our dynamic began to surface. Dylan's once sporadic compliments about my housekeeping or cooking gradually morphed into expectations. Comments that initially seemed harmless started to sting, especially when dinner was late or the house slightly dishevelled. My journey from an assistant manager internal audit to a housewife was not just a change in job titles, but a profound transformation in lifestyle and identity, one that brought with it unexpected challenges and introspections. I began to feel less like a partner and more like a housekeeper in my own home. It got to the point where I had to call my best friend Lillian to share my frustrations. "I just feel like I'm slowly losing myself," I admitted to her over the phone. Lillian's response was laced with worry and support. "Losing yourself? Delilah, you're vibrant and full of life. Don't let this domestic role extinguish your spirit." Her words rang true. I had always valued my independence and the ability to forge my own path. Yet here I was, feeling adrift in a role that I never imagined for myself. Despite my initial adjustment to being a homemaker, I realised I was far from having it all figured out when my husband Dylan came home one evening with unsettling news. Dylan walked in, his face solemn, an uncommon expression for him. "Delilah, we need to talk," he began, his coat still on. Trying to inject some humour, I quipped, "What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost." He replied, "It's my parents. Their apartment is being renovated and they need a place to stay for a few weeks." His gaze avoided mine. "A few weeks?" I responded, surprised and hesitant. "Yeah, just a short while. It shouldn't be too bad," he assured, finally meeting my eyes. With a mix of reluctance and obligation, I agreed. "Okay, for a couple of weeks, but they need to respect our space, Dylan." He nodded. "Of course they will. Thanks, babe. You're the best." A few days later, Dylan's parents, Silas and Ruby, arrived with their entire household, stuffed into numerous bags and boxes. They even brought furniture. "Delilah dear, make some room. We've got a lot of stuff," Ruby announced, pushing past me with a heavy box. Silas followed, hauling in an enormous armchair. "Hope you don't mind us bringing some comforts from home," he said as he struggled to fit it through the door. Overnight comma. Our cosy home turned into a makeshift storage unit. Their belongings were everywhere, and it was overwhelming. Silas and Ruby wasted no time making themselves comfortable. Silas commandeered the TV, flipping through channels as if it were his own, and Ruby began to reorganize my kitchen. "Ruby, what are you doing?" I asked, trying to remain calm. "Just organizing things a bit better, dear," she replied, not even pausing to look at me. I bit my tongue, reminding myself it was only temporary. But inside, I was seething. This was my home, and they were treating it like a holiday retreat. Then came the dinner debacle. I prepared a healthy meal of salad and grilled chicken, but Ruby stared at her plate disdainfully. "What's this? Rabbit food?" She scoffed, pushing her plate away. Mum, come on. Delilah put a lot of effort into this, Dylan intervened. It's fine, Dylan. I can make something else, I offered, though I was anything but fine. No, let's order pizza. I need some real food, Silas said, already dialing. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling of being an outsider in my own home. Dylan snored beside me, unaware of the turmoil inside me. As the host of my own home, I found myself tangled up in more responsibilities than I had ever imagined. My in-laws, Silas and Ruby, seemed to have mistaken my hospitality for an invitation to transform my living space into their personal amusement park. This uncomfortable arrangement quickly deteriorated when Ruby commandeered my kitchen as though she were the general of an army. One morning, while I was preparing avocado toast, she barged in and scoffed, labelling my breakfast choice as bird food. Despite my explanation that it was a healthy option, she dismissed it, insisting on cooking eggs and bacon instead, nudging me aside to take control of the stove. I was left simmering with frustration at her blatant disregard for my personal food preferences and kitchen space. Silas's takeover was no less invasive. He claimed our living room as his exclusive den. On one occasion, eager to watch the season finale of my favourite series, I found him sprawled across the sofa, absorbed in a noisy action film. My polite request to change the channel was briskly rejected, leaving me to feel like an outsider in my own lounge. But the intrusion reached new heights when I caught Ruby rummaging through my closet, rearranging my belongings to make room for hers, under the pretense of helping. Her cavalier attitude towards my privacy sparked a rare outburst from me, which attracted Dylan's attention. When I explained the situation, Dylan suggested I tolerate the invasion a bit longer, his tepid defence adding to my sense of isolation. Amidst these trials, a startling discovery pushed me to my limit. My missing bank card was found in Ruby's purse. She nonchalantly admitted to using it for convenience, unaware of the seriousness of her actions. This breach of trust was interrupted by Dylan's entrance, drawn by the commotion yet again, leaving me to ponder the escalating disrespect and how much more I was expected to endure in what no longer felt like my sanctuary. He approached me, clearly troubled, and shared that his mother had taken my bank card without asking and used it. Holding up the card for emphasis, I explained the situation to him. He turned to confront his mother, Ruby, who simply shrugged it off, claiming she only needed a few groceries, not something extravagant like a diamond necklace. I was stunned by her nonchalance. "It's my money, Ruby. You can't just use my things without permission," I protested. That's when Dylan, attempting to defuse the situation, trivialized it by saying, "Delilah, let's not overreact. You benefit from my income too, so it's not a big deal if my mom borrows from it occasionally." His words felt like a betrayal. "Your money? It's our money, Dylan, and it's about our trust and respect in this marriage," I replied, shocked by his indifference. He dismissed the situation with a careless shrug. "It's not a big deal. She'll pay you back." The atmosphere at home grew tense over the following weeks. One evening at dinner, I finally brought up the lingering question of his parents' living arrangements. "So, when do you three plan to move back to your apartment?" I asked Silas and Ruby casually. They laughed off the suggestion. "Move back? Why would we?" Ruby replied, sharing a knowing glance with Dylan. Silas chimed in, saying it was unnecessary to spend money on rent when they could simply stay here. Dylan avoided my gaze as he justified their decision, claiming it made no sense financially to rent another place. I felt a deep sense of loss. My sanctuary, my home, was being overtaken by his decisions. Things escalated when I went for a jog to clear my head and ended up tripping and severely hurting myself. I hobbled back in agony, only to find Dylan and his parents nonchalantly sitting in the living room. "Dylan, I think I've broken my leg. I need to go to the hospital," I managed, trying to suppress my pain. Dylan looked up, clearly annoyed. "What now, Delilah? Can't you see we're busy?" Ruby accused me of being dramatic, suggesting it was just a sprain. Silas scoffed, saying at my age I shouldn't be running around like a teenager, and that this was what I deserved. Anguished and feeling utterly unsupported, I insisted on needing help, despite their dismissive attitudes. Dylan finally agreed to take me, but his manner suggested he was more inconvenienced than concerned. At the hospital, my fears were confirmed. I had a broken leg. The following weeks were torturous. Despite my limited mobility and pain, I was still expected to manage household chores, with no assistance from Dylan or his parents. Their indifference to my suffering was clear, and I felt more alone than ever in what was supposed to be our shared home. I was in the middle of preparing lunch, gingerly manoeuvring around the kitchen on crutches, when Ruby entered. Noticing my struggle, she sharply commented, "Can't you speed it up? We're all hungry," without any offer to assist. Exasperated, I replied, "I'm already doing my best on one leg." "Well, it's clearly not enough. You're just being lazy," Ruby shot back. Just then, Dylan walked into the kitchen. "What's happening here?" he asked, turning from me to his mother. "Your wife is taking forever to prepare lunch. It seems like she's using her injury as an excuse," Ruby complained. Dylan sighed. "Delilah, can you try a little harder? We're all hungry." I was stunned. "Try harder? I'm managing on crutches, Dylan. What more do you expect?" He just shrugged and exited the kitchen with his mother, leaving me seething and in pain. What unfolded next was even more outrageous. Several weeks post-injury, Ruby and Silas decided to announce they were hosting Thanksgiving at our house, inviting all their relatives. I was taken aback. "Thanksgiving here? With my leg like this?" I asked incredulously. Ruby waved off my concern. "Oh, you won't have to do much. Just stay out of the way and let us handle everything." I was livid. "This is my home, Ruby. You can't just decide to invite people over without consulting me." Dylan intervened, attempting to calm the waters. "Delilah, it's just a family gathering. Let's not overreact." "Overreact? I can barely walk, and now your parents want to take over our house for a party." I raised my voice in frustration. Silas added, "We thought it'd be nice to host it here. After all, we're all living together now." Then, Ruby dropped another bombshell. "Actually, Delilah, we think it might be best if you stayed somewhere else for a couple of weeks. With your leg and all, you'll just be in the way." I stared at her dumbfounded. "Stay somewhere else? In my own house?" "Yes, just for a couple of weeks. It's for the best," Ruby insisted, as if she was doing me a favour. My anger reached a boiling point. "You want me to leave my house so you can play host? That's ridiculous." Trying to appear reasonable, Dylan added, "It's only for a short while, Delilah. It'll be easier for everyone." "Easier for everyone? This is my home, Dylan. I'm not going anywhere," I declared, my voice quivering with rage. Silas shrugged. "We thought you'd appreciate not having to deal with the holiday stress." That was the last straw. "Get out! Both of you, get out of my house now!" I shouted, a mixture of rage and disbelief washing over me. Dylan's face turned red. "Delilah, you're being unreasonable. They're my parents. You can't just kick them out." "Unreasonable? They're taking over my home and you're allowing it," I retorted, steadfast in my resolve. I found myself nearly shouting at this point as Dylan's face took on a stern look. "If you can't show respect for my parents, perhaps it's time we questioned whether we should be together." "Do you want a divorce?" he asked, his tone icy. I met his gaze defiantly, adrenaline coursing through me. Without saying another word, I strode over to my desk, opened a drawer, and retrieved a set of documents I had prepared for a situation just like this. "What are these?" Dylan's voice shook as he took the papers from my hand. "Divorce papers. I've had them ready for quite some time," I replied, my voice unwavering. He looked from the papers to me and back again. "You're serious? You'd actually go through with this?" "Yes, I am. I refuse to be intimidated in my own home, by you or anyone else," I declared, feeling oddly empowered amidst the tumult. Ruby and Silas were there too, speechless. Dylan appeared as if he'd been struck. The room was heavy with tension. "Choose, Dylan. Your parents or our marriage?" I demanded, standing firm. Dylan's laugh was bitter, a chilling sound. "Fine," he said, and to my astonishment, he signed the papers right then and there. "You'll regret this, Delilah. You can't even fend for yourself without me," he said. I watched him, feeling both relieved and incredulous. "I'll manage," I murmured, though barely audible. He shrugged. "Your loss, then." He, along with his parents, gathered their belongings and left. The moment the door closed behind them, I felt a peculiar tranquility. Yes, I was alone, but it was far preferable to the endless strain and disrespect. The first thing I did was change the locks. It felt as though I was securing my own sanctuary. Thanksgiving arrived sooner than I anticipated. Still adapting to my new solitude and finding solace in the quiet, I was startled by a knock at the door. Opening it, I was met by Dylan, his parents, and a group of their relatives all ready to celebrate. "What are you doing here?" I asked, astonished. "We're here for Thanksgiving, Delilah. Did you really think we wouldn't come?" Dylan said smugly. I was flabbergasted by their nerve. "You're not welcome here anymore, Dylan. This is my house and you're not my family, not after what happened." Ruby Silas interjected. "Oh, come on, Delilah. Don't be petty. Let's just enjoy dinner." I held my ground. "No, you need to leave now." Dylan scoffed. "You can't kick us out. This was our family home." "Not anymore. I changed the locks, Dylan. You relinquished any rights to this house when you signed those papers," I said, feeling another wave of empowerment. There was a brief silence, then Dylan's face flushed with anger. "Fine, have it your way," he said, and they all turned and left. After the Thanksgiving confrontation, I began to rebuild my life. It wasn't easy, but it was truly mine. A few weeks later, sitting in my tranquil living room, my best friend Lillian stopped by. "Hey, Delilah, how are you holding up?" Lillian inquired as she entered, looking round. "Better than I expected, actually," I replied, smiling at her. I sat down with a smile, greeted by Lillian's curious gaze. "You look different, stronger somehow," she remarked, her observation making me laugh. "Yeah, shedding some dead weight will do that," I replied. Our laughter filled the air, and I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in months. Lillian's demeanour then turned serious. "So, what's next for you, Delilah?" she asked. Taking a deep breath, I shared my plans. "I'm headed back to work. I've already started looking for positions in accounting. It's daunting, but I'm ready to stand on my own 2 feet again." Lillian nodded in approval. "That's the spirit. You were always the brightest in the office. Any place would be lucky to have you." Her encouraging words bolstered my resolve. Energized, I was ready to reclaim my independence and face the world anew. The following weeks were a blur of job interviews and personal rebuilding. I secured a promising position at a local firm, and for the first time in ages, I felt genuinely excited about the future. My home was my own again. My life was my own again. I had weathered the toughest storms and emerged stronger than ever.
I always felt out of place among my family members. My name is Ellie, and I'm part of a family that has owned restaurants for generations. My father is a robust and commanding figure who runs our family restaurant with a firm hand. Alongside him is my mother, who adeptly manages the food and beverage manager, making them the perfect team. Then there's my older brother, Daniel, who everyone sees as the heir apparent to our family enterprise. At family dinners, filled with the rich sense of my father's celebrated roast, discussions would often revolve around the restaurant. One evening, as my mother raved about a new recipe featuring an herb I favoured, she sparkled with excitement, trying to recall its name. "Thyme," I responded quietly, fidgeting with my meal while Daniel scoffed dismissively about my interest in what he considered a trivial detail. My father's gaze would often turn to me, pressing me about when I would start showing interest in the restaurant business, reminding me that I wasn't getting any younger. In those moments, I felt like shrinking into my chair as I expressed my preference for being outdoors, tending to plants. This exchange of looks between my parents was all too familiar. They didn't understand my passion for botany, viewing it as impractical compared to the tangible demands of restaurant management. The pressure to conform was a constant in my life, except for when I was with Grandma. She lived alone on the outskirts of town, surrounded by a lush garden that was a sanctuary to me. She was the antithesis of my parents' gentle, patient, and profoundly understanding of my affinity for the natural world. I spent countless hours with her, hands in the soil, where she shared her wisdom. As we planted tulips together, I confided my frustrations. "Why don't Mom and Dad see how much I love this?" I asked. Grandma, wiping her brow, looked at me with knowing eyes and said, "Your parents want the best for you, Ellie, but they don't view the world through the same lens we do. There's magic in the earth and the plants. It's okay to be different." Her words were a balm to my spirit, especially as I faced mockery from Daniel, who derogatorily nicknamed me the gardener. His taunts, meant to belittle, couldn't dampen my spirit, for I saw beauty and peace in the natural elements that he could never appreciate. As high school graduation approached, I felt like I was at a crossroads, about to choose a path markedly different from my family's expectations. The house buzzed with excitement over Daniel's plans to join the family business. But amidst this, I felt like an observer in my own life. During one family gathering, as my dad outlined his ambitious plans for the restaurant, praising Daniel's future role, I knew that my future lay elsewhere, along a path lined with greenery and growth, not grills and grease. In choosing to follow my passion for botany, I was not just choosing a career, I was choosing to honor my true self, inspired by Grandma's encouragement to embrace my uniqueness. A boastful rooster might be proud, but I've got plans of my own, Dad. We're going to take this place to new heights. As I idly played with a loose thread on the sofa, I felt almost invisible. Then, Mom's sharp tone cut through my reverie, pulling me back to reality. "What about you, Ellie? Ready to step up? You could manage the front desk, learn the ins and outs." I hesitated, took a deep breath. This was the moment of truth. "Actually, I'm not going to work at the restaurant. I plan to study landscape design," I whispered, my voice just a murmur. The room fell deathly silent. Dad's face flushed a deep crimson, his frustration palpable. "Landscape what now?" he snapped, incredulous. "That's no career for you. You're a part of this family, and the restaurant is our legacy." Daniel, ever the skeptic, scoffed. "What are you going to do? Plant flowers for a living?" My cheeks heated with embarrassment and determination. "Yes, actually. That's exactly what I intend to do. I'm good at it, and I love it," I retorted. Mom looked bewildered, concerned. "Ellie, be practical. You can't earn a living by playing in the dirt." Rising to my feet, a wave of defiance washed over me. "It's not just playing in the dirt, Mom. It's about creating something beautiful, something tangible. I'm not asking for your approval, but I need you to understand this is my choice." Dad's hand slammed down on the table, his voice thunderous. "If you pursue this foolishness, you're on your own. Don't expect any help from us." My stomach twisted into a knot, yet my resolve was firm. "Fine. I'll do it on my own." Grandma, quietly knitting in the corner, finally spoke up, her gentle voice filled with conviction. "Father, let the girl follow her heart. She has a real talent, and it'd be wrong to squander it." Dad grumbled and turned away. "Fine, do what you want, but don't come running back to us when it all crumbles." As I walked away, my heart raced. Daniel's sarcastic voice rang out. "Good luck, gardener. Let's see how far those flowers take you." Entering college felt like plunging into uncharted waters, exhilarating yet intimidating. Far from the well-trodden path of my family's expectations, I was eager to forge my own path in the world of landscape design. The first day buzzed with the energy of new beginnings. I found a seat in the back, hoping to blend into the shadows, when Eliana, a vivacious redhead with a spark of mischief in her eyes, plopped down beside me. "Hey, newbie, I'm Eliana. First time in landscape design?" I nodded shyly. "Yeah, I'm Ellie. It's all quite overwhelming." Her laughter was infectious. You'll fit right in. Just wait until you start working with the real dirt. It's amazing. What brought you here? I paused, the sting of my family's disapproval still fresh. I've always loved plants and the outdoors. It's where I belong, I confessed. Eliana's smile broadened. Then you're in the perfect place. Classes were a flurry of activity. I soaked up knowledge like a sponge, from soil science to artistic design. At last, I was finding my voice. During a particularly engaging language class, our teacher, Mr. Joseph, a man as robust and towering as an oak, called me aside. "Ellie, your designs are truly remarkable. You have a natural flair for this," he remarked with a tone both earnest and motivating. I was taken aback and managed a shy, "Really? Thank you, Mr. Joseph. I'm just doing my best." He looked at me intently, his gaze piercing. "You have potential, Ellie. Don't let it go unfulfilled. Strive harder." His encouragement became my mantra. I found myself spending every possible hour in the studio, my designs growing bolder and more creative. It was a grueling yet thrilling venture. Despite the joy it brought, a part of me always missed my family. One evening, I mustered the courage to call home. The phone rang, each tone laden with anticipation, until my mother's sharp voice cut through. "What do you want, Ellie?" Her words stung. I tried to keep calm. "I just wanted to see how everyone's doing," I replied. Her response was scornful. "Oh, now you care, after you've deserted your family to go mess around with your projects?" I clenched my jaw, maintaining composure. "I haven't left anyone behind, Mom. I've simply chosen a different path." Her laugh was harsh. "A dead end, more like. Don't expect us to wait for you when it all falls apart." The conversation left me disheartened, yet it ignited a resolve in me to dive back into my work with even greater determination, to prove to both my family and to myself that I was on the right track. Life, however, had other plans. In my final year of college, I received a call from Aunt, my mother's sister. Her voice trembled as she broke the news of my grandmother, Rose's, passing. Grandma had always been my anchor, the one who championed my aspirations. Losing her was like losing a piece of my soul. The funeral was a cold, formal event. My family, Dad, Mom, and my brother Daniel felt like strangers. After the service, I overheard Mom talking to Aunt, incredulous that Grandma had left her house to me. "What's she going to do with it? She can barely look after herself," Mom scoffed. Anger welled up inside me, but I held it back. This was neither the time nor the place. At the reading of the will, it was confirmed that Grandma had bequeathed her house to me. The house, surrounded by the beautiful garden where I had spent countless hours with her, was now mine. My family was flabbergasted, their murmurs prickly with disbelief. "Why would she leave it to Ellie? She's hardly ever here," Daniel whispered bitterly. Dad was visibly upset. "This is ridiculous. We could have sold that house and invested in the restaurant." Standing firm, I addressed them all. "Grandma knew how much I loved that house and garden. It's where we shared so many wonderful moments. I intend to keep it, just as she wished." Mom's reply was icy. "So, you're going to just live there alone, toying in the dirt? What a waste." Their harsh words hurt, but my decision was made. I moved into Grandma's house, dedicating myself to the garden she cherished so dearly, intent on preserving her legacy and proving my path worthy. I embarked on a journey to revamp my grandmother's garden, dedicating myself fully to nurturing every plant and designing each flower bed. Over time, this garden evolved into my own private retreat, a sacred space where I could escape the scrutinizing eyes and high expectations of my family. It was during this personal transformation that I received an elegant invitation to Daniel's wedding, stirring a whirlwind of conflicting emotions within me. The invitation, with its golden lettering on a pristine white background, symbolized a chapter of my life I thought I had closed. With mixed feelings, I decided to attend the wedding, but on my own terms. I chose an outfit that was elegant yet simple, a stark contrast to the gardening clothes my family was used to seeing me in. As I entered the venue, the familiar sights and sounds momentarily took me back to a past I had left behind. I spotted my family, including Daniel, all looking picture perfect. As I approached them, my mother's sharp tone cut through the bustling noise, expressing surprise at my attendance. I calmly stated my intention to witness Daniel's marriage, emphasizing it was a family occasion after all. Daniel's smirk, both familiar and unwelcome, greeted me as he sarcastically commented on my appearance, suggesting I had dressed up from gardening just for the event. Although his words stung, I brushed them off, determined to maintain my composure. His bride then remarked snidely about my gardening background, questioning if I managed to clean the dirt from under my nails. Her mocking tone was intended to wound, but I responded coolly, assuring her I cleaned up well and extended my congratulations to the couple. My father's icy stare and cold words followed, reminding me that my presence didn't change the past or the choices I had made. Their harsh words were like thorns, but over the years, I had developed a resilience that shielded me. I reiterated my only purpose was to wish Daniel a happy married life, after which I was directed to a secluded table. From my corner, I could sense the curious glances and whispers labeling me the black sheep of the family. Yet, as I sat there, a profound sense of pride surged within me. I was no longer the timid girl they remembered, but a strong woman who had flourished on her own terms, despite their doubts. The evening wore on, and attempting to blend into the background became increasingly difficult, especially when I caught the attention of some acquaintances from my childhood. As they approached with sneers, calling me the family's little dirt digger, I corrected them firmly, stating my profession as an urban designer, though I doubted they would grasp the distinction. Their laughter was dismissive and scornful, but I held my ground, asserting the legitimacy and significance of my work. My resolve silenced their mockery, marking a subtle yet significant victory in reclaiming my dignity and acknowledging my accomplishments. During a dinner at a crowded event, an older man sitting nearby suddenly joined our conversation. He had been quietly listening, his disapproval evident as he listened, but he spoke up to commend a young woman's work. "I've seen her creations in the new park. They are remarkable," he stated confidently. His unexpected support caught the group off guard. They had been subtly mocking her earlier, but now, embarrassed and with bruised egos, they quietly retreated. Feeling a surge of courage from the man's words, I left the safety of my corner to mingle. As I moved through the room, avoiding curious stares and hushed whispers, I overheard a familiar voice. It was Daniel, gossiping with his friends. "She's the family oddball, more interested in gardening than what most consider real work," he sneered, amusement mixed with a touch of scorn in his tone. His friends laughed loudly, labeling her the family's black sheep. The harshness of their words stung, but I reminded myself that their opinions did not define her. As I navigated through the crowd, I ran into my cousin Lucy, who always had a gentle demeanor. "Hey, I've really admired some of your landscape designs," she said with genuine warmth. Her encouragement brought a small smile to my face. "Thank you, Lucy. That means a lot, especially today." Lucy's understanding gaze told me she disagreed with how others treated me, and she was glad I pursued my passion despite them. Our brief conversation was a comforting break from the evening's undercurrents. Returning to my corner, I felt the heaviness of the night amidst the loud music and laughter, all seeming distant and disconnected. I longed for the night to end. As the celebration wound down, the mayor took the stage. A distant relative through marriage, he unexpectedly began his speech by highlighting a guest. "Tonight, I want to recognize a star in landscape design, Ellie," he announced, causing me to almost spit out my drink in surprise. The room filled with applause, an unfamiliar and overwhelming sound to me. I stood up, feeling exposed as the mayor continued praising my work in transforming the city park, mentioning several awards I had won. My family's table reacted with shock and embarrassment. Daniel's bride whispered incredulously to him, "Is he talking about your sister, the gardener?" As the applause continued, I felt a newfound confidence replace the shadows of doubt. With everyone's attention on me, I took the opportunity to speak. "Thank you, Mayor, for your kind words. It's an honor to contribute to the beauty of our city," I began, my voice steady and clear. As I scanned the crowd, my eyes finally rested on my family. It's strange, isn't it? The way life unfolds? Daniel, you and your wife are indeed a match, both uniquely talented in your disregard for others. A profound silence engulfed the room, thick with tension. My parents, my brother, and his fiancée turned a deep shade of red, their embarrassment as palpable as if I had struck them. My mother's voice sliced through the quiet, sharp and clear. "Ellie, what are you doing? This is your brother's wedding." I met her eyes without wavering. "I'm just telling the truth, Mom. Something we seem to have a hard time with." Daniel stood, his face a mask of fury. "You don't get to speak to us like this." But I stood my ground, calm and resolute. "I've earned my right to speak, Daniel. Maybe it's time you listened." The standoff ended with Daniel retreating to his seat, the room gradually returning to a murmur. The mayor nodded to me in respect before moving on. As I sat back down, I felt a weight lift slightly. I had voiced my truth and stood up for myself in a way I never had before. No longer merely the overlooked gardener, I was Ellie, the recognized urban designer, surpassing the narrow expectations of my family. After the wedding, news of my success spread, and accolades for my landscape designs began to accumulate. Stepping into the spotlight felt like emerging from the shadows after years of obscurity. Then one afternoon, while sketching a new garden design, my phone rang. It was my mother, her tone unusually sweet. "Ellie, darling, we've been hearing so much about your walk. Your father and I are so proud." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? That's quite the change." There was a pause. "We were hoping you could visit. It'd be nice to catch up." I could almost hear the cogs turning in her head. Was this a genuine invitation, or an opening to my bank account? "Mom, that's not fair. We're family," she protested when I challenged her intentions. The word family stung. This was the same family that had all but disowned me for chasing my dreams. I ended the call, unwilling to let them back into my life just because they now sensed opportunity. A few days later, Daniel showed up at my doorstep, avoiding eye contact. "Ellie, can we talk?" he asked, uneasy. I crossed my arms, skeptical. "What do you want?" Daniel shifted, uncomfortable. "Look, I know we haven't been the best, but things are hard, and I thought maybe you could help me out." I was stunned by his audacity. "Save it, Daniel. I'm not your ATM. You made your stance clear. You can't just waltz back into my life when it suits you." He tried to argue, but I cut him off. "You made your bed, now lie in it." After he left, I sat in my garden, surrounded by the beauty I had created. Calls from my family continued over the next week, attempts at reconciliation, but I didn't respond. I was done with their fair-weather affection. I had built a life for myself, one that didn't require their approval or their greed. I was thriving on my own, and that was enough. As I admired the plants and flowers, evidence of my dedication and passion, I knew I had everything I needed. I was happy, successful, and free from the toxic ties that once bound me. This wasn't just the end of a chapter. It was the beginning of a new book, my book, and I was determined to make it a bestseller, crafted on my own terms.